Chapter 1361. A 9-star Earth Saint artifact seems to have reached its limit. In the courtyard, Yi Chen raised the heavenly sword high up. Surging sword chi radiated outwards. Space-time trembled and light circulated. The entire heavenly sword was like the center of a storm, blooming with boundless power. The integration of the first divine stone was rather smooth, but the integration of the second divine stone nearly failed. This made Yi Chen not dare to integrate the third divine stone. After all, a 9-star Earth Saint artifact was already very terrifying. Once the integration failed, even if the heavenly sword didn't explode, its origin would be damaged. The remaining divine stone, Yi Chen prepared to integrate it into the supreme armor. A normal supreme armor could no longer defend against a peak supremacy's attack. Even a grade 5 supreme armor would find it hard to defend against a legendary supremacy. It would be easily pierced and torn apart, unable to reduce the damage. If there was a supreme armor, it could at least reduce the damage. This was also the reason why Yi Chen could almost kill a quasi-legend supremacy in the Divine Fire Cave. It was because the other party's supreme armor was too weak, and Yi Chen's heavenly sword was too sharp. If the other party's supreme armor wasn't broken by the heavenly sword, then it could reduce a portion of the damage that Yi Chen inflicted on him. The armor on Yi Chen's body had already been damaged in the Desolate God Tower. The current one was a gift from Ying Liexiong. It was called the Black Eagle Battle Armor, a 4th-grade supreme armor. A supreme armor was 10 times more precious than a supreme weapon. Ying Liexiong could gift a 5th-grade supreme weapon to Yi Chen. As for a 5th-grade supreme armor, even the Unfalling Eagle tribe didn't have many of them. Therefore, it was impossible for him to gift it to Yi Chen. After all, the higher the grade of a supreme weapon, the more divine stones it would take. For Yi Chen, a grade 4 supreme armor was enough. He could integrate at least 3 divine stones, so one was naturally not a problem. Without much effort, Yi Chen integrated the last divine stone into the heavenly sword armor. In an instant, the heavenly sword armor shone brightly, emitting an indestructible aura. Yi Chen estimated that the grade 1, Earth Saint armor was at least 10,000 times harder than the grade 4 supreme armor. A normal legendary supremacy might not be able to pierce through the heavenly sword armor even with a low-star Earth Saint artifact, unless it was a high-star Earth Saint artifact. As long as it wasn't pierced, the heavenly sword armor could help Yi Chen reduce the majority of the damage. Rumble. On this day, the entire Unfalling Eagle tribe suddenly shook. The Starry Sky Bear Dog King, who was brought by Yi Chen to the Unfalling Eagle tribe, suddenly stood up. Its fur stood up, and its eyes were filled with ferocity and fear. Berserk beasts were different from martial artists. If a berserk beast wanted to become stronger, it could only devour the flesh and blood of other life forms. The stronger the life form, the greater the benefits it would bring to them. In order to nurture the Starry Sky Bear Dog King, Yi Chen would occasionally go out to hunt some berserk beasts that were stronger than the Starry Sky Bear Dog King and use their flesh and blood to feed the Starry Sky Bear Dog King. Right now, the Starry Sky Bear Dog King's strength had already reached the level of a high-class supremacy. Enemy attack. Yi Chen guessed. Roar roar. The Starry Sky Bear Dog King walked over and growled at Yi Chen. You're saying that there's a powerful berserk beast invading the Unfalling Eagle tribe's array? Yi Chen asked in surprise. As the owner of the Starry Sky Bear Dog King, Yi Chen could understand the other party's growl. There's actually a berserk beast invading a rank 8 tribe. I wonder what's going on. Yi Chen brought the Starry Sky Bear Dog King and flew towards the place where the tremors were the strongest. The entire Unfalling Eagle tribe was in an uproar because of the tremors. Everyone was panicking. However, at this moment, a thunderous voice rang out, "It's a berserk beast. Everyone, don't be nervous." It was the leader of the Unfalling Eagle tribe, Ying Liexiong. Crackle. Lightning flashed, and Ying Liexiong instantly arrived outside the Unfalling Eagle tribe. In his line of sight, a huge dark golden berserk beast that looked like a pangolin was attacking the array. Its pair of golden eyes were filled with ferocity and coldness. Damn it, it's a legendary berserk beast, a gold-eating beast. Berserk beasts were also divided into ranks. A legendary berserk beast was naturally a berserk beast that had the strength of a legendary sovereign. For example, the starry sky bear dog king was a super berserk beast, and one day, it could also become a legendary berserk beast. There were many legendary berserk beasts in the wilderness god continent, but most of them were on the weaker side. Only the 8 legendary berserk beasts were the most troublesome, and among them, the gold-eating beasts could be ranked in the top 3. As the name suggested, gold-eating beasts loved to devour metal. They could bite through any kind of metal, including sovereign-grade metals. As they had devoured countless sovereign-grade metals and absorbed their essence, their bodies were countless times harder than that of a sovereign-grade metal. No one below the demigod realm could hurt them. They couldn't even leave a mark on their bodies. In the entire wilderness god continent, the only things that could threaten the gold-eating beasts were the 5 Sky Saint artifacts. Among them, the Redbud Flower Tribe's Sky Saint artifact, the Redbud Battle Armor, could only be used to protect themselves. Ying Liexiong frowned. This was not the first time he had encountered gold-eating beasts. As the scourge of the wilderness god continent, the leaders of the 5 rank 8 tribes had once united to hunt down gold-eating beasts. What was funny was that the invincible Sky Saint artifact could only slightly injure gold-eating beasts. In order to prevent them from taking revenge, the leaders of the 5 tribes had to work together to cast a seal and seal gold-eating beasts. They didn't expect that gold-eating beasts would break out of the seal today. Are we going to start with the unfalling eagle tribe? Ying Liexiong opened his right hand, and a huge hammer appeared in his hand. The hammer had 8 petals, and a yellow light shot up into the sky, mixed with golden lightning. Sky Saint artifact, Sky Hammer. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The gold-eating beast's roar was very sharp, similar to a sound wave attack. Because of this sound, the ground within a radius of dozens of miles cracked inch by inch. The sharp sound even passed through the power of the formation and was transmitted to the inside of the unfalling eagle tribe, causing many people to bleed from their orifices and fall unconscious. Don't be presumptuous. Ying Liexiong swung his hammer at gold-eating beasts. Bang! The yellow light exploded, and gold-eating beasts retreated dozens of steps. The Sky Hammer was a Sky Saint artifact, after all. Even something as powerful as gold-eating beasts would be forced back. The furious gold-eating beast stomped on the ground with its hind legs, causing the ground to bulge and explode. In the next moment, gold-eating beast's speed burst to the limit and clawed at Ying Liexiong. The claw light was extremely bright, causing the world outside of the claw light to darken. In the world, there was only this claw light. Open heaven and earth. Ying Liexiong shouted and swung his hammer. The space-time in front of him twisted to the limit, and the wind, water, and fire became chaotic, turning into chaos and spreading out. The greatest sound was devoid of sound. At this moment, all sound disappeared. Only the bubbles of primal chaos were exploding and spreading. Within the protective range of the unfalling eagle tribe's array, Yi Chen sucked in a breath of cold air. Supreme martial skill combined with a heavenly saint artifact was actually this powerful. This was the Huangshan continent. If it were in the outer universe, unfalling eagle Liexiong's supreme martial skill might really be able to turn a vast expanse of space into primal chaos. Roar, roar, roar. The starry sky bear dog king kept growling. It wanted to become a legendary beast as powerful as gold-eating beasts and look down on the world of beasts. Chapter 1362. The man and the beast fought for hundreds of rounds. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Ying Liexiong's advantage lay in his powerful attack, and his weapon was the Sky Explosion Hammer, a heavenly saint weapon. The gold-eating beast's advantage lay in its powerful defense and was not afraid of any attacks. After the battle, the grassland within a radius of 1,000 miles was destroyed. Some places sank hundreds of meters deep. Some places were piled up into mountains, and some places were riddled with holes. To be able to cause such a huge commotion on the Huangshan continent, it was definitely inhuman. The fact that the Huangshan continent was so sturdy was enough to prove how terrifying a true god was. To deal with experts below the true god level, a true god might only need to set up one rule. Damn it! Ying Liexiong faced the gold-eating beast alone. He was under a lot of pressure. He could only hope that the leaders of the other 4 tribes would come as soon as possible. Time passed slowly. An hour had passed. Ying Liexiong was sweating profusely and his muscles were sore. On the other hand, the gold-eating beast was getting stronger and stronger. Ying Liexiong, I'm here. In the distance, a voice as loud as a bell wave could be heard. It was a figure that was even more majestic than a bear. He held a gigantic axe in his hand, and with a swing of the axe, an axe light flew out. As it flew, the axe light expanded thousands of times. In the end, it was like an axe that could split the heavens, and it chopped down on the gold-eating beast. The leader of the Battle Pagoda tribe, Tai Tan, was holding the heavenly saint weapon, the heavenly battle axe. Apocalyptic thunder punishment. Almost at the same time that the axe light flew out, a lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket fell from the sky, bombarding the gold-eating beast's body. These lightning bolts weren't just ordinary lightning bolts, they were made up of lightning runes. Each lightning rune contained an enormous amount of lightning power. With billions of lightning runes gathered together, they could tear apart the world and judge all living things. It was the leader of the Yunzhong tribe, Yun Piaomiao. He held the heavenly saint weapon, the thunder punishment spear. Star-shattering. At the same time, a sea of stars spread out and covered the gold-eating beast. Then, the sea of stars spun and exploded. It was as if a large part of the starry sky was being destroyed. How can I not use my Star Sea Spear to deal with the gold-eating beast? The leader of the Star Ocean tribe, Chen Tianding, rushed over with the quintessential saint weapon, the Star Ocean Spear. The 4 legendary supremes and the 4 heavenly saint tools immediately suppressed the gold-eating beast. However, it was obvious that the gold-eating beast was not a fish on the chopping board that could be slaughtered by anyone. The repeated setbacks had stimulated the gold-eating beast's true ferocity. A terrifying tyrannical aura filled the air, and even the space-time was in a state of chaos. Obviously, the gold-eating beast's tyrannical aura had affected and changed space-time. Compared to the gold-eating beast, the beasts that Yi Chen had seen before were simply obedient babies. Too cruel. Yi Chen sighed. When one's savagery reached a certain level, even one's aura could kill someone. Zhong Xian turned his head to look at Heaven Splitter. Due to the fact that he could tame it, the starry sky bear dog king had lost some of its wildness and ferocity. Even if it were to become an existence on par with the gold-devouring beast one day, it probably wouldn't be as savage as the starry sky bear dog king. Woo! Crack let out a low growl. It was indeed frightened by the cruelty of the gold-eating beast, and its legs were trembling. It couldn't be blamed for this. In the beast world, the strong preyed on the weak. Inferior beasts would always be suppressed by superior beasts. If the superior beast was extremely cruel, it would suppress the inferior even more. It was already not easy for Crack to stand still. If it were any other super beast, they would have already laid down and buried their heads in the ground. A sharp hissing sound filled the entire plains. The unfalling eagle tribe was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. The desolate race's greatest natural enemy was the fierce beasts. The terrifying fierce beast in front of them was a nightmare for them. Even the 4 tribe leaders combined could not subdue it. If it were anyone else, they would have been easily torn to shreds. Z. An even sharper sound was heard. It was like a sharp knife that sliced through the plains. The gold-eating beast's figure turned blurry, as layers of dark golden shadows dazzled everyone's eyes. In the next moment, the gold-eating beast charged at Ying Liexiong. Although fierce beasts generally had low intelligence, they could still tell who was strong and who was weak. In the previous battle, Ying Liexiong had been greatly drained. The gold-eating beast's combat power erupted, prepared to deal a heavy blow to him. The gold-eating beast opened its mouth wide, as a brutal aura enveloped Ying Liexiong. Facing this extremely brutal aura, Ying Liexiong's body paused unnaturally. Just as the gold-eating beast was about to swallow Ying Liexiong, a purple beam of light flew over and blocked the gold-eating beast. Through the netherworld's sacred eye, Yi Chen could clearly see that the beam of light was enveloping a graceful figure. It was the Redbud Flower tribe's leader, Kang Siwei. She had spread her arms out, blocking the gold-eating beast at the critical moment. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere, and the gold-eating beast staggered back. As for Kang Siwei, she was like a cannonball, blown away, creating a huge crater on the plains. But soon, Kang Siwei flew out. With the protection of the redbud flower battle armor, it would be difficult for the gold-eating beast to hurt her. To a certain extent, her defense was stronger than the gold-eating beast's. Of course, her overall combat power was definitely not as strong as the gold-eating beast. Among the 5 heavenly saint weapons, although the redbud flower battle armor could not threaten the gold-eating beast, it was the most important. Without Kang Siwei blocking the gold-eating beast, the other 4 would be in danger. After all, they could not suppress the gold-eating beast to the point where it could not move. Join hands and cast the seal, Star Sea Tribe's leader, Chen Tian-ding, said. Yes. Ying Liexiong nodded seriously. If Kang Siwei had not helped him, he would have definitely been injured. The gold-eating beast was not only strong in combat power, but also in endurance. If they continued to fight, the gold-eating beast would become stronger and crazier, and they would slowly become weaker. Slow down, I think casting the seal is useless. It won't be long before it breaks out of the seal again. Kang Siwei objected. Then what should we do? Tai Tan asked. Why don't we tear the space-time and send it into the Desolate God's secret territory, just like how our ancestors sent the other 2 legendary beasts into the Desolate God's secret territory? Desolate God's secret territory. The 4 were stunned. The Desolate God secret territory was the most mysterious place in the Desolate God continent, and it was also the most dangerous place. Those who entered had never come out. Although they knew where the Desolate God secret territory was, no one dared to go in. As Kang Siwei had said, sending the gold-eating beast into the Desolate God secret territory was indeed the best way. No matter how strong the gold-eating beast was, once it entered, it would not be able to come out. However, tearing the space-time was not an easy task. Our heavenly saint weapons can be activated to the limit and tear the space-time slightly. I think with the 5 heavenly saint weapons combined, we should be able to tear a hole big enough to send the gold-eating beast into the Desolate God secret territory. Kang Siwei said. Chapter 1363. In that case, let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, we'll seal it again. Ying Liexiong looked at the grassland and frowned. If the gold-eating beast continued to wreak havoc, the unfalling eagle tribe would definitely have to migrate. They had to deal with the gold-eating beast as soon as possible. The plan had been decided, but to carry it out, they still had to put in some effort. The gold-eating beast would definitely not enter the space-time crack obediently. The battle continued, and the grassland was ruined beyond recognition. With the protection of the formation, Yi Chen did not have to worry about the aftermath. His eyes stared at the 5 tribe leaders without blinking. Sometimes, they would look at Ying Liexiong, Kang Siwei, Tai Tan, Yun Miao Miao, and Chen Tianding. These 5 people not only had Sky Saint weapons, but their strength was also extraordinary. The martial arts they used were all supreme martial arts. Not to mention facing the supreme martial arts, just looking at them made Yi Chen's heart tremble. Perhaps in terms of profoundness, supreme martial arts might not be much more profound than supreme martial arts, but after integrating the power ultimacy, supreme martial arts had the power to destroy the world that supreme martial arts did not have. Power ultimacy, power, power. What is power? Great power? Not necessarily. The power of everything's operation is too shallow. Watching the battle between the 5 legendary supremes and the gold-eating beast, Yi Chen seemed to see the shadow of power, vague yet real. Yi Chen's power ultimacy had already reached more than 90% and was close to completion. It was very difficult to complete the power ultimacy, mainly because Yi Chen was not a supremes in physique refinement, so he could not directly feel the deepest essence of the power ultimacy. It was very difficult for a supremes in physique refinement to cultivate a supreme martial art to completion. Power should be a kind of violence. The so-called violence is not violence in a narrow sense, but violence in a broad sense. Overwhelming 10 people is just one kind of violence. Unknowingly, Yi Chen's power ultimacy had grown to the completion realm, and was only one step away from completion. After raising the power ultimacy to completion realm, Yi Chen's aura changed subtly. Every action and gaze gave people a sense of oppression. Raw. Heaven Splitter was very sensitive. He instantly sensed Yi Chen's strange behavior. He ran over and rubbed his head against Yi Chen's shoulder. Berserk beasts were born with the innate ability to use the Profound of Power. The Profound of Power had already been integrated into their bloodline. In terms of exerting the Profound of Power, Yi Chen wasn't even a match for Heaven Splitter. This was because Heaven Splitter could already use the Profound of Power to perfection. Of course, Heaven Splitter himself didn't know any great principles. Using the Profound of Power to perfection was just an instinct. Therefore, when Yi Chen's Profound of Power improved, Heaven Splitter regarded Yi Chen as his master even more. Is this the essence of power? Yi Chen could feel the profound power contained in Skysplitter's bloodline. In the past, he couldn't see it. No wonder this savage beast gave off such a strong pressure. The battle between the leaders of the 5 tribes and the gold-eating beast had reached its climax. It had to be said that Kang Siwei was very useful. With her holding off the gold-eating beast, the other 4 could safely suppress it. Do it. An illusory red bud armor appeared outside of Kang Siwei's body. It not only gave her an indestructible defense, but it also increased her power to the same level as the gold-eating beast. With the help of her heart power explosion, Kang Siwei locked the tail of the gold-eating beast, making it unable to move. Open heaven and earth. Cut the sky and crack the earth. Crush the stars. Destroy the world thunder punishment. The leaders of the 4 tribes increased their desolation origin to the limit and threw it at a point in front of the gold-eating beast. The 4 supreme martial arts were extremely horrifying individually. When they were gathered at one point, their power reached the critical point of the Huangshan continent. The spacetime suddenly shattered, and a thick spacetime crack appeared. The inside of the spacetime crack was chaotic, with colorful lights surging. It might have been a moment or a year, but the spacetime crack became clear. A strange environment appeared in the spacetime crack. The aura in the strange environment was primitive and wild, and it was 100 times stronger than the wild aura in the Huangshan continent. The leaders of the 4 tribes all knew the location of the Huangshan secret territory, so they didn't choose the location of the spacetime crack blindly. The moment the spacetime crack appeared, a horrifying suction was produced. Under this suction, large pieces of grassland were sucked in. Each piece was 100 miles wide, covering the sky. The gold-eating beast struggled with all its might. There was a trace of fear in its eyes. This fear didn't come from the spacetime crack, but from the strange environment on the other side of the spacetime crack. There was something there that terrified it. The spacetime has been torn apart. Yi Chen was also terrified. The spacetime of the Wild's continent had been strengthened to an unimaginable level by the Aragami. It could be imagined how powerful the Heavenly Saint artifacts and supreme martial arts were to be able to tear apart the spacetime. However, the role of the legendary supremes couldn't be ignored. If it was Yi Chen who used the Heavenly Saint artifacts and supreme martial arts, the power would definitely be many times weaker than any one of them. Among the 5 people present, every one of their martial primordial spirits was at the silver level, and they weren't at the silver primary level. They were at least at the silver intermediate level or advanced level. Finally, the gold-eating beast was sucked in, along with a large piece of grassland. Kang Siwei and the others relied on the Heavenly Saint artifacts to resist the suction, but they were still locked in place and couldn't move. Once they moved, their center of gravity would deviate, and they would definitely be sucked in. At that time, it would be too late to cry. Through the spacetime crack, the 5 people saw the scene on the other side. Suddenly, the environment on the other side changed into another place. There was a 2-headed fierce beast with dark grey skin. It had a dragon head and a snake head. This 2-headed fierce beast posed a far greater threat to the 5 people than the gold-eating beast. Could it be the legendary fierce beast, the Gemini Tyrannosaurus? Look, another fierce beast has appeared. It looks like the legendary fierce beast, Tifula. The environment changed again, and the 5 people saw another fierce beast. It looked like a baboon, and its eyes were blood red. It squatted there, and its eyes were cold, as if it could see through space-time. The gold-eating beast was one of the top 3 legendary fierce beasts in the Wilderness God continent. However, in the legends of the Wilderness God continent, there were many more terrifying legendary fierce beasts than the gold-eating beast. However, they had never appeared, so the wilderness race gradually forgot about them. If there was a ranking of the legendary fierce beasts that had appeared in history, the gold-eating beast might not even be in the top 20. In the space-time crack, the gold-eating beast's body trembled. In the world of fierce beasts, the weak were prey to the strong. It was even crueler than the civilizations of different races. Be it the Gemini Tyrannosaurus or Tifula, they only brought it fear, just like how Sky Splitter was afraid of it. It could feel that the environment inside was completely different from the outside. The fierce beasts that could survive inside were definitely 100 times more brutal than it was. The brutal ones were afraid of encountering even more brutal ones. Chapter 1364. Finally, the gold-eating beast was sucked to the other side, and the space-time crack was repairing itself. The gap was getting smaller and smaller, and finally, there was only a thin crack left, and it was about to close. Boom! The space-time suddenly shook violently, and the leaders of the 5 tribes took a few steps back. Kang Siwei was the closest to the shaking point, so she sat down on her butt. Her full chest was heaving up and down, and her face was full of shock. What is that? Kang Siwei opened her rosy mouth. The space-time crack that was about to close was suddenly opened up by a giant claw. The claw was dark blue, and it was covered in scales. A brutal aura came through the claw, and it made everyone feel like they had returned to the ancient times, where ferocious beasts roamed freely. They felt like they were floating, and there was no sense of security at all. Attack it! Don't let it come over! Kang Siwei screamed. She remembered a legend of the ferocious beast world. In the desolate god secret territory, there was a demigod ferocious beast. Just from the size of the claw, the beast that opened the space-time crack was at least the size of a small mountain. It should be known that in the desolate god continent, the rules were very strict. The bigger a ferocious beast could maintain, the stronger it was. For example, the super ferocious beast, Sky Splitter, was only the height of a human, while the gold-eating beast was dozens of meters long. Other than that, it was impossible for a legendary ferocious beast to open a space-time crack with just one claw. Only a demigod ferocious beast could do that. Yes, attack it. The leaders of the other 4 tribes came to their senses. The desolate god secret territory was very special. Tearing through space-time to enter was relatively easy, but tearing through space-time to come out was as difficult as reaching the sky. This demigod ferocious beast could not come out by itself, so when it saw the space-time crack, it took the chance to attack, trying to escape from the desolate god secret territory. This concerned the safety of the entire continent, as well as their own, so the 5 of them attacked the dark blue claw, trying to force it back. Roar! Vaguely, the 5 of them, including Yi Chen and Sky Splitter, heard a terrifying roar. When Sky Splitter heard this roar, he immediately lay down. The difference between him and a demigod ferocious beast was too big. Just one roar was not something he could withstand. Luckily, the other party did not come with its real body, or else it would be even worse. Compared to the universe, this place is more like a mythical era. Yi Chen had already been shocked many times today, and the appearance of the dark blue claw had made him shiver even more. However, the universe doesn't seem to be that simple. Hell, the Milky Way, and other unknown places. In addition to the Black Wind Stream where countless demons are imprisoned, there might even be demigod-level demons alive. It seems that the universe seems to be bound by an even stronger game rule. As he grew stronger, Yi Chen's view of things changed. In the past, he thought that Sky Demon Sovereign and True Martial Sovereign were the strongest in the universe. They were at least at the top level. Now, it seemed that he had been looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. The real experts had probably retreated behind the scenes. Perhaps because of the rules of the game, they couldn't force their way out. Or perhaps, they were like the dark blue giant claw beast, trapped in some place and unable to escape. With the lifespan of a demigod, how could they not know where they were? The 9-turn star was so safe because of the power of a demigod. Only by becoming stronger will I be able to obtain more information. Yi Chen would never stop growing stronger, and now there was another factor. Don't be disheartened. Let's grow together. Sky Splitter was huge. It could reach Yi Chen's waist even if it lay there. Yi Chen reached out and touched Sky Splitter's head. It was furry and very comfortable. Boom boom boom. The space-time trembled more and more violently. Although the dark blue giant claw could ignore the combined attacks of the 5 tribe leaders, it still had to bear the power of the space-time fissure. It could not fight back and could only passively take the hits. With every hit, the space-time fissure would close a little. Once the space-time fissure was completely closed, the dark blue giant claw would definitely be cut off. Even demigods could not resist the rules set by the desolate god. Otherwise, there would not be so many legendary beasts trapped in the desolate god's secret realm. Seeing that the space-time fissure was about to close, the dark blue giant claw was squeezed out of shape. However, right at this moment, a terrifying power surged out from the dark blue giant claw. This power was not just any beast's power, but a higher level power. How could the 5 tribe leaders not know that this was divine power? Divine power was different from pure energy. Divine power was a fusion of one's own cultivation, domain, will, and even heart power. In short, except for martial arts, basically everything had been fused into it. This was a power that surpassed nature and could not be restrained at all. Not all demigods could cultivate divine power. Normally, only powerful demigods could do so, and new demigods had not even crossed the threshold. Of course, there was definitely a difference between the divine power of a demigod-level beast and the divine power of a true god. From the fact that this demigod-level beast was trapped in the desolate god's secret realm, it could be seen how huge the gap between a demigod and a true god was. A single rule could completely restrict you, and you could not resist it. Catcher. The space-time fissure that was about to close suddenly collapsed. The dark blue giant claw stretched out, revealing an abnormally strong dark blue arm. Crack! Suddenly, a black lightning flashed, and the demigod-level beast's arm turned into dust. The space-time fissure instantly closed up. Luckily, the rules of the desolate god continent are very sensitive to divine power, or else we would have been killed in an instant. Kang Siwei still had lingering fears. The other 4 tribe leaders nodded. There had been too many demigods in the history of the desolate god continent, but very soon, these demigods would disappear from everyone's sight. Therefore, many people of the desolate race believed that other than entering the desolate god tower, as long as they could become demigods, they could leave the desolate god continent. This was also the goal that they had been working hard for. After solving the problem of the gold-eating beast, the 5 of them were a lot more relaxed. As for the demigod-level beast, they did not care about it at all. No matter how strong the demigod-level beast was, it could only stay in the desolate god-mystic realm. It had nothing to do with them. Ying Liexiong, that outsider young man in your tribe should have understood the word martial, right? How is his strength? Yun Piaomiao looked at Yi Chen, who was protected by the array, and asked curiously. Ying Liexiong did not hide it, his sword skills have reached perfection. Perfection? That's really fast. No wonder he was the best in this year's tower. Yun Piaomiao was stunned for a moment before she smiled and said, but tell him to be careful. The martial Dao primordial spirit of the youngsters in my tribe is already in a state of advancement. Once it reaches the silver martial Dao primordial spirit, he will become a legendary sovereign in name only. What is his identity? In truth, Ying Liexiong was very curious. I can't say. Yun Piaomiao shook her head. So mysterious, Ying Liexiong muttered. Ying Liexiong muttered. The relationship between the leaders of the 5 great tribes was very subtle. They were both opponents and friends, depending on the situation. Yun Piaomiao, look at how proud you are. My tribe's evil star became a legendary supremacy a week ago. Chen Tianding threw a bomb. What? So fast? Ying Liexiong and the rest looked at Chen Tianding. Chen Tianding smiled. Actually, he could have condensed the silver yuan soul a long time ago. It's just that he has cultivated a martial yuan soul secret technique. This secret technique requires sufficient accumulation to allow him to break through. Otherwise, There will be repercussions. Kang Siwei and Tai Tan looked at each other. Among the 5 tribes, only their 2 tribes did not have outsider geniuses. These outsider geniuses were too terrifying. Although Kang Xueli and Zhong Ta were also absolute geniuses, they were obviously weaker than the 3 of them. 10 years later, Evil Star will visit Yunzhong tribe. Tell the mysterious kid in your tribe to prepare. Chen Tianding continued. 10 years. It seems like Evil Star is quite confident. Yun Piaomiao smiled. If Evil Star went to challenge the bloodline of the great Demon King now, the bloodline would definitely not be his match. The mention of 10 years later was definitely to give the bloodline a chance. The space outside the black wind stream was pitch black and deep as usual. Black air currents surged out from the cracks in the space, polluting the heavenly Tao law and causing the space to creak. Hiss. A very clear sound rang out. If anyone was here, they would definitely be dumbfounded. The space-time at the entrance of the black wind stream was like a piece of adhesive tape, being torn apart layer by layer by an invisible force. After dozens of layers were torn apart, a giant transparent lock appeared. The giant lock had yin-yang patterns, 5 elements patterns, and space-time patterns. It was obvious that this was a sealing lock. Catcher. The seal lock opened automatically. At the same time, the seals of the countless caves inside the black wind stream opened one after another. It seemed like the giant lock outside was the core of the seal of the entire black wind stream. The seal is gone. A faint voice came from one of the caves. Then, a figure covered in black smoke came out. The seal is gone. Haha, I'm finally free. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 plumes of black smoke shot out from the caves in the canyon walls. The auras that leaked out from the black smoke were all paragons. Of course, most of the caves were completely silent. Clearly, the wretch devils in those caves had long since fallen. Only these wretch devils could survive. In the caves deep in the canyon, a few voices were talking. It's been so long. To think that we've been imprisoned for more than 1,000,000 years. I wonder what the situation outside is like. After we get out, I'll definitely destroy a few planets of the human race with life. I haven't been locked up for so many years for nothing. I advise you not to be rash. We'll talk after we get out. Who cares? I don't believe that there's anything out there that can fight against us. As the few of them were talking, there was a sudden fluctuation in the depths of the cave. Then, endless black smoke surged out, eventually turning into a faint golden human figure. A terrifying pressure radiated out. Congratulations on your release, Lord. The few voices hurriedly said. Chapter 1365. I, Demon Saint Gallo, have finally seen the light of day again. The faint golden figure gradually became clearer. It was an evil demon with 2 heads and 4 arms. Because his physical body had been destroyed by the seal, he was now in the state of martial Parthuanshan, and his martial Parthuanshan was a gold martial Parthuanshan. One had to know that once the martial Parthuanshan reached the gold level, he would be a real demigod. In fact, the evil demons that survived in the black wind stream were all in the state of martial Parthuanshan. Their physical bodies had been sealed for countless years and had long been destroyed. 1 demigod evil demon and 5 legendary paragon evil demons walked out of the cave. Welcome back, Lord. In the valley, hundreds of paragon evil demons greeted respectfully. Some of them came from the demons, some from the evil spirit race, some from the Yaksha race, and some from the Green Man race. But no matter which race they came from, they had to greet the demigod respectfully when they met him. If the legendary paragon was the pinnacle of the paragons, then the demigod had long surpassed the paragon level and was a higher life form. Let's conquer the human alliance together, Demon Saint Gallo said coldly. After being imprisoned by the human demigod for countless years, Demon Saint Gallo had been holding back his anger. Every time he woke up from his deep sleep, he swore that he would conquer the human alliance and turn everyone in the human alliance into his slaves so that they would never be able to rise again. Although the Mora death prison of the demons had also been opened, and there would definitely be a human demigod in there, he was confident in his own strength. One had to know that he had hidden his strength back then. Roar. The paragon evil demons roared in unison. After being imprisoned for countless years, it was time to vent, or they would go crazy. Demon Domain, Mora Death Prison. The seal opened automatically, and the paragon evil demons flew out. The last one was a demigod, a human demigod. His body was shining with a faint golden light. Every once in a while, the universe will be thrown into chaos. But who would know that this is just a game to nurture experts? The human demigod had a scholarly temperament. When he opened and closed his eyes, the sun and moon were dim, deep and unfathomable. On this day, the universe was in complete chaos. Under the leadership of two demigods, the Human Race Alliance and the Demons Alliance engaged in an astonishing battle. In this battle, a total of 36 Supremes perished. Most of them were Supremes who had just escaped from the Black Windstream and the Mora Death Prison. They had been sealed for too long, and like Empyrean Rotting Demon, their strength was far from their peak. The most shocking thing was the battle between the two demigods. Although demigods were suppressed by the will of the universe, they were still not something a legendary supremacy could compare to. The battle between Demon Saint Galwaz and the human demigod had caused a huge black hole to appear in the universe. It should be known that although a super supremacy could also create a black hole, it was only a small one. The black hole created by two demigods was enough to devour everything and destroy the laws of heaven. Nothing could exist within a radius of 1 light year. The battle ended as quickly as it came. Both sides laid down their banners and laid down their drums, quietly waiting for the next decisive battle. The Wilderness God Continent. 10 years passed in a flash. In the mountains 10,000 miles away from Yunzhong Luo, Evil Star and the black-robed young man each stood on a mountain. Who exactly are you? Supreme Evil Star's aura was thousands of times stronger than 10 years ago. His surging essence, chi, and spirit were comparable to the sun in the sky. It was dazzling and pure, emitting a faint silver light. This was a sign that his martial yuan soul had advanced to the silver level. Since you want to know so much, there's no harm in telling you. The black-robed young man pulled down the hat that was covering his face. His long black hair fluttered in the wind like ink. His pupils were pitch black to the extreme, like two black holes. At the same time, a terrifying demonic aura erupted, causing the world to darken. Demonic power. It's demons. Evil Star narrowed his eyes and carefully sized up the other party. Suddenly, his pupils dilated. Great Demon King bloodline. That's right. The black-robed young man grinned. Submit to me. Evil Star. You should know what my appearance means. The black-robed young man looked straight at Evil Star. A complicated expression flashed across Evil Star's face. Then, he laughed. It's easy to make me submit. Defeat me. Otherwise, so what if you have the Great Demon King bloodline? Don't worry. It's not difficult to defeat you. The black-robed young man was indifferent. Evil Star snorted. Just like the legends. The Great Demon King bloodline is really arrogant. However, your martial Dao Yuanshan has just advanced to the silver level, while I have 10 years of accumulation. If this is where your confidence lies, then let's begin. The black-robed young man stood with his hands behind his back. The aura on his body was as deep as the sea. With him as the center, the sky and earth darkened and became deeper and deeper. It was so deep that Evil Star could not see the black-robed young man's position clearly. It was as if he was in the sky, but it was also as if he was right in front of him. Evil Star's heart trembled, and his battle intent exploded. Take my demonic divine fist. His entire person turned into a ray of grey flowing light. Evil Star punched toward the deepest part of the sky and earth. The terrifying fist force covered the sky and earth, and it was unscrupulous. With one hand behind his back, the black-robed young man extended his right hand and clenched his fist. Boom! He punched out, and a dazzling light shone. Space-time trembled, and Evil Star flew backward. What a light dark fist! Evil Star's figure flashed, and he pounced toward the black-robed young man again. The pervasive fist force filled the sky and earth, and it was as if there were countless Evil Stars attacking. In contrast, the black-robed young man's expression was relaxed. His surroundings were pitch black, but his fist force was incomparably dazzling. This was the uniqueness of the light and darkness ultimacy. After 1,000 moves, the black-robed young man suddenly met Evil Star. The darkness of the sky and earth gradually merged into his body, and his right fist became brighter and brighter, even brighter than the sun in the sky. It was extremely blinding. Peng, the fist struck out, and a dazzling light flashed past. Evil Star spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. This fist was too fast, so fast that Evil Star had no time to react. Is this the bloodline of the great Demon King? Evil Star was at a loss for a moment. He felt that he was already strong enough, and no matter what aspect, he was not inferior to the shocking geniuses of ancient times. However, facing the bloodline of the great Demon King, he was still defeated in a mess, and this was under the condition that the other party was not serious. It should be known that more than 10 years ago, judging from the results of the Tower Challenge, the other party was only slightly stronger than him. More than 10 years had passed, and the other party had actually widened the gap. What was even more terrifying was that the other party's martial path Yuanshan was actually stronger than his. Hadn't he just broken through? Do you still want to fight? The black-robed young man asked calmly. Forget it, I'm not your match. I'm willing to submit to you. However, if there comes a day when your improvement slows down, don't blame me for leaving you. Evil Star took a deep breath, and said with a complicated expression. The black-robed young man smiled and said, sure. As long as you have the ability, you can take everything back from me at any time. Chapter 1366. After comprehending the word martial, Yi Chen summarized the 5 elements sword art and the spacetime sword art. The 5 elemental sword art still had 3 styles. The first style was the hegemon sword style, the second was the illusory sword style, and the third was the defensive sword style. The spacetime sword art had 2 styles. The first style was the chaos style, which incorporated the essence of the death cleave. When the sword was unleashed, spacetime would become chaotic. The second style was the burial sword style. Just like the chaos style, the burial sword style incorporated the essence of the burial sword art. However, the changes were greater. It was quite different from the original burial sword art. Among the 5 great sword techniques, the defensive sword technique was the most profound. It was a technique that could be used to attack while defending, and it was good at dealing with opponents who were stronger than the user. The burial sword technique was the most frightening. Not only could this technique destroy the opponent's time, but its killing power was also increased by a lot. Although the original burial sword technique could freeze the opponent, it was much weaker in terms of power. It was only by combining the essence of the word break that it had some killing power. Although the power ultimacy has not been perfected, I should be able to do it by incorporating it into the simplest and most direct hegemon sword art. Among the 5 sword moves, the hegemon sword art was undoubtedly the most compatible with the power ultimacy. The others were a little more complicated. 5 elements ultimacy, power ultimacy. Yi Chen's method was simple. He would change one ultimacy after every move. The first move was the 5 elements ultimacy, the second was the power ultimacy, the third was the power ultimacy, and the fourth was the power ultimacy. The cycle continued. The move that contained the 5 elements ultimacy was more mysterious and extraordinary. The move that contained the power ultimacy didn't focus on technique. It had a sense of freedom and bravery. The difference in philosophy also made it very difficult to fuse 2 ultimacies. One had to find the same point and then fuse them. Yi Chen, I have bad news for you. The 2 from the Cloud Tribe and the Starsea Tribe have become legendary supremes. Lan Yu brought a piece of news that day. Oh, so fast. Putting away the star sword, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows. I can't believe it either. Do you want me to ask your father to teach you some ways to break through the martial Dao Yuan spirit? Lan Yu's intuition told her that the entanglement between the 3 of them was very big. She didn't want to see Yi Chen fall behind. This problem can only be solved by myself. Yi Chen shook his head. All right. If there's anything you need help with, just let me know. Thanks a lot. After Lan Yu left, Yi Chen smiled bitterly. Yi Chen was not surprised that Evil Star had broken through to the legendary supreme stage. Evil Star's age was more than double his, and he had accumulated enough. However, the breakthrough of the Great Demon King's bloodline had indeed exceeded Yi Chen's expectations. It seemed like the legends were true. The Great Demon King's bloodline had unlimited potential. In terms of accumulation, it would not take a long time to achieve it. In terms of talent and potential, the Great Demon King bloodline is indeed invincible, but in terms of comprehension ability, I'll have to fight to know. Yi Chen felt a surge of pride in his heart. It was only interesting to defeat such an opponent. Yunzhong landed in a luxurious courtyard. The black-robed young man and Evil Star sat in the pavilion, drinking tea and eating meat. Great Demon King bloodline, I still don't know your name. Evil Star put down the meat in his hand and asked. The black-robed young man said slowly, the Great Demon King bloodline is determined by the heavens. There's no need for a name. You can call me the First Demon Lord. The First Demon Lord. Evil Star raised his eyebrows. The highest authority of the demons was the Sky Demon Lord, and the Great Demon King bloodline was called the First Demon Lord. It was obvious that he wanted to replace the Sky Demon Lord. Of course, this was understandable. When the Great Demon King bloodline appeared, everyone had to give way, including the Sky Demon Lord. Who's that person from the Unfalling Eagle tribe? I feel like you should know him. Evil Star asked again. He's a rare genius of the human race. His name is Yi Chen. In terms of talent, you can't compare to him. He's no more than 800 years old. In the previous war between the Demons Alliance and the Human Race Alliance, because of him, the Demons Alliance lost. Oh, it seems like you came to the Wilderness God continent because of him. Evil Star looked at the First Demon Lord meaningfully. He can barely be called a strong opponent of mine. Avoiding him is the best choice. You can't be thinking that the Great Demon King bloodline is the strongest right from the start, right? The First Demon Lord didn't care about his guess. He didn't need the process, but the result. No matter what, there aren't many people who can make the Great Demon King's bloodline avoid him. Fine, I'll help you test him. Let's see how much progress he has made after comprehending the word martial. Evil Star stood up. The First Demon Lord raised his teacup and took a sip. Then I'll have to trouble you. He also wanted to know how much progress Yi Chen had made. When it came to one's strong opponent, one naturally had to know oneself as well as the enemy. It was indeed much easier to fuse the power ultimacy with the Hegemon sword style. If the previous Hegemon sword style was a perfect supreme sword move, the current Hegemon sword style barely had the power of a supreme sword move. It could be considered a quasi-supreme sword move. Supreme martial arts are the perfect fusion of technique and power. It's not enough to have technique without power, and it's not enough to have power without technique either. The current Hegemon sword style is the true Hegemon sword style. On the grassland, a sword mark that was dozens of meters deep spread out. At the beginning of the sword mark, Yi Chen stood there. As the days passed, Yi Chen started to fuse the second style. This style was the first style of the spacetime sword technique, chaos style. As for the fusion of illusory sword style, defensive sword style, and burial sword style, the difficulty was too high. Yi Chen planned to go from low to high, step by step. Defensive sword style was the last. In terms of profoundness, this style was the first, and the difficulty of fusing it was even higher than the most terrifying burial sword style. Halfway through the fusion of the chaos style, an uninvited guest came. Evil Star wanted to challenge him. Yi Chen, there's no need to be in such a hurry to accept the challenge. He's a legendary supremacy. It's unfair to you. Lan Yu said. Yi Chen smiled and said, it's fine. I also want to know what level I've reached. Even if the other party is a legendary supremacy, he might not be able to defeat me. From the results of the previous Tower Challenge, in terms of martial arts progress, he was one of the best. Only the Great Demon King bloodline could compare to him. Moreover, he had comprehended the word martial first, so there was no reason for him to not accept the challenge. The battle between Yi Chen and Evil Star caused a commotion in the Unfalling Eagle tribe. Everyone wanted to see who was stronger after a dozen years. Leader, things aren't looking good this time. In the Unfalling Eagle tribe, An elder sized up Evil Star and shook his head slightly. The other party had already become a legendary supremacy. His foundation was many times stronger than Yi Chen's. Ying Lai Xiong said, "How would we know if we haven't fought? I think since he dares to accept the challenge, he must have some confidence. I'm afraid it's too mysterious." The elders of the Unfalling Eagle tribe didn't think highly of Yi Chen. They were both geniuses, but there was a huge gap in their realms. It could be said that the difference was like the distance between heaven and earth. Seeing that Yi Chen's martial Dao Yuanshan hadn't broken through, Evil Star was a little disappointed. Fortunately, he already knew that Yi Chen's sword art had reached the perfection level. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be interested. "Yi Chen, don't blame me for not giving you time. I just want to let you know how terrifying the Great Demon King bloodline is," Evil Star said as he slowly let out a breath. In the same amount of time, the Great Demon King bloodline improved faster than everyone else. Sometimes, unfairness was also a kind of fairness. Chapter 1367. It doesn't matter whether it's fair or not. To me, it doesn't matter. This world was unfair to begin with. Forcing it was just a display of cowardice. True experts never cared about fairness. They only cared about the results. Good. It seems like you're very open-minded. Evil Star was a little surprised. He was a legendary paragon, but the other party still dared to say that. It seemed like he had a lot of confidence. The two of them were fighting 3,000 kilometers away from the Unfalling Eagle tribe. That place was full of potholes, and there was not a single piece of good land in a radius of 1,000 kilometers. It was the place where the 5 tribe leaders had fought the gold-eating beasts. Because this was the wilderness god continent, it was not so easy to fill up the potholes. Thus, Eagle Liexiong had moved the tribe 3,000 kilometers away. High up in the sky, Evil Star and Yi Chen stood in the air, several kilometers away from each other. A few hundred kilometers away from them, a large number of spectators surrounded them. Evil Star's body shone with a brilliant silver light. This was the light emitted by his martial Dao Yuanshan. The silver light fused with the evil power, turning into a grey light full of evil qi. Whoosh, the grey light flashed, and Evil Star instantly appeared in the sky above Yi Chen. His fist flashed down. The first form of the extreme evil divine fist, Evil Fist 10 flashes. The Evil Fist 10 flashes trajectory was erratic, and it was unscrupulous. It was already very impressive for an ordinary legendary paragon to be able to block 6 or 7 flashes. Dang, 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 10 consecutive crisp sounds rang out. Evil Star's Evil Fist 10 flashes was blocked by Yi Chen. He had used the most exquisite defensive sword form. Evil Star, if you think you can defeat me without going all out, then you're gravely mistaken. The perfect defensive sword form did not have any blind spots or weak spots. No matter how strong the enemy's attack was, unless it exceeded the limits of the defensive sword form, it would be impossible to break through the defense. Don't be too confident. Take another heavenly Evil Fist. Time and space twisted slightly, and Evil Star's figure disappeared. Only the distorted fist force descended from the sky, as if it was a fist from beyond the heavens. Straight chop. Vertical chop. Diagonal chop. Flick chop. Yi Chen's defensive sword art was both offensive and defensive at the same time, allowing him to defend from any angle as he sliced apart wave after wave of fist power. In the end, these fist power all combined into a mess and broke down on its own. It turned out that Yi Chen had used the power to push some of the fist power away and hit the other fist power like dominoes, creating a chain reaction. What a profound defensive sword technique. The elders of the Unfalling Eagle tribe praised him in their hearts. They were all supreme martial arts of perfection, but there were still differences in their strengths. The key lay in the individual's creativity. Obviously, Yi Chen's defensive sword style had reached a very high realm. Up in the sky, Evil Star frowned. He had somewhat underestimated the power of a consummate supreme sword technique, and even more so, he had underestimated Yi Chen's defensive sword technique. Even though he had already become a legendary sovereign, his martial arts were still at the realm of consummate supreme fist technique. Moreover, He had made a breakthrough in the past 10 years. More than 10 years ago, he only had one fist technique that was a consummate supreme fist technique. Seems like I have to be serious. This time, Evil Star came not only to completely defeat Yi Chen. Of course, that was the most important thing. Secondly, he wanted to find out what was so special about this peerless genius Yi Chen. Why did the first demon lord say that he was not as good as him? If any genius heard this, they would be somewhat unconvinced. Boom. The void trembled slightly. Evil Star was like a grey sun, exploding with the power of a legendary sovereign. It was still Evil Fist 10 flashes, but this time, it was more than 10 times faster than before. It was like a flash. Only the first demon lord's fist speed was faster than his. In addition to speed, the destructive power of Evil Fist 10 flashes had also increased by more than 10 times. The fist energy of the first flash was dissipated by Yi Chen, and it shot into the potholed ground. Instantly, the ground shook, and dust filled the air. A pitch-black hole appeared. Second flash. Third flash. Ninth flash. There was actually no gap between each flash. It was just that the flow of time was slightly different. The extreme Evil Fist contained the profound of space and time. When it came to the ninth flash, Yi Chen felt the strain that he hadn't felt for a long time. This flash used the acceleration of time and the vibration of space to create a space-time vibration wave. The space-time vibration wave wrapped around the fist energy, making it difficult for Yi Chen to use it to counterattack. In the end, he could only rely on his understanding of the profound of space and time to disintegrate the space-time vibration wave and forcefully split the fist energy. 10th flash. This flash was extremely fast, and Yi Chen's defensive sword style had already cancelled out the opponent's 9th flash. It would be difficult for him to make a comeback in a short time. Moreover, the defensive sword style might not be able to block the 10th flash. That's your limit. Evil Star coldly stared at Yi Chen. Chaos. Facing the so-called desperate situation, Yi Chen's expression didn't change. All of a sudden, a sword aura that could confuse one's soul and make one's senses scatter burst out. Yi Chen's figure seemed to have turned into thousands of pieces, dodging the Evil Fist's 10 flashes and 10 flashes. When the 10th flash disappeared, Yi Chen's figure pieced together again, forming a whole body. How is this possible? Evil Star's pupils dilated as if he had seen something unbelievable. The profound of space and time is indeed the most difficult and obscure, and also the most bizarre complementary profound. Ying Liexiong revealed a smile. The profound of space was fine, but the profound of time depended on one's talent. Those who didn't have enough talent, even if they were given all the resources, they wouldn't be able to comprehend the profound of time to a high level. It's my turn to attack. Using the defensive sword form, Yi Chen more or less knew the limits of Evil Star's power. Overall, he, who had a perfect supreme sword art, was slightly weaker than his opponent, who had advanced to the legendary supreme level. Of course, this was under the premise that Hegemon's sword form and chaos form were not perfect supreme sword arts. Raising the heavenly sword, Yi Chen suddenly waved it. A strange scene happened. Yi Chen's arm, together with the heavenly sword, seemed to have been cut into countless pieces by space and time. Countless sword lights shot out at Evil Star, splitting again along the way and intertwining with each other. It was as if one part of space and time was inserted into another, intertwining and complicated. The whole world became a kaleidoscope, and it was a three-dimensional kaleidoscope. Chaos form. Not good. Evil Star's body flickered as he pushed his demonic divine fist to the highest level. Relying on his study of the profound of space and time, he blocked the intertwining sword lights one after another. Even so, his comprehension of the profound of space and time was not as profound as Yi Chen's. Some impossible loopholes were dug out and magnified. Then, sparks appeared on his body. Those sparks were caused by the friction between the sword lights and the divine armor. Fortunately, his divine armor was a 2-star Earth divine artifact. Otherwise, the sword lights would have been enough to injure him. Fart. Evil Star spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Yi Chen in disbelief. Yi Chen's realm was not as high as his, but he was able to defeat him. This is his first time comprehending the word martial, but I have comprehended it 3 times. He surpassed me 3 times in just 1 time? For a moment, Evil Star felt a little sad. It seemed that he was destined to be the foil of the first Demon Lord and his opponent. Chapter 1368. It had been a year since the battle with Evil Star, and Yi Chen finally managed to integrate the Profound of Power into his chaotic form. Previously, during the battle with Evil Star, he had only integrated half of the Profound of Power into the chaotic form. Next, Yi Chen tried to integrate the illusory sword form and the Profound of Power. The illusory sword form was a little different from other sword techniques. This form had a higher requirement on one's heart force. With a strong heart force, the sword speed of the illusory sword form could surpass the heavenly Tao. Then, it integrated the essence of the word illusion, which could cause the enemy to hallucinate. Hence, Yi Chen estimated that the fusion with the Profound of Power wouldn't be smooth. After all, illusion and power weren't compatible. Sure enough, after 2 years, Yi Chen's illusory sword form and the Profound of Power stagnated after only 1/3 of the fusion. The further he went, the greater the resistance was, as if there was an invisible hand obstructing the fusion. I better integrate the sword burial form first. After persisting for another 3 months, Yi Chen had no choice but to give up. The process of integrating the sword burial form was much smoother. For the past 2 years, its fusion speed was slower than the illusory sword form, but at least it had never stopped progressing. After spending 7 years, the sword burial form had successfully integrated the Profound of Power. Usually, other than integrating the sword techniques, Yi Chen would often bring Sky Splitter out to hunt. The current Sky Splitter was already a pinnacle super berserk beast. Yi Chen realized that if a berserk beast wanted to evolve, devouring a berserk beast of the same level was useless. Or rather, it had to devour a berserk beast that was stronger than itself. In order for Sky Splitter to become a pinnacle super berserk beast, it had devoured a total of 9 pinnacle super berserk beasts, growing from 2.5 meters to 3 meters. Yi Chen's goal was to make Sky Splitter a legendary berserk beast. Only then would it be able to help him and fight alongside him. Otherwise, it would be like Dream-Eating Wolf, gradually becoming useless. It could be said that the path of a berserk beast's growth was the path of slaughter. No wonder it was called a berserk beast. Of course, every dire beast had its own growth limit. Fortunately, Heaven Splitter hadn't reached that limit yet. The prairie where the Unfalling Eagle tribe was located was filled with ferocious beasts. Some flew in the sky, some swam in the water, and some burrowed underground. There were all kinds of ferocious beasts. However, it was a bit difficult to find a quasi-legend ferocious beast. After all, quasi-legend ferocious beasts were already considered powerful ferocious beasts on the Wild's God continent, and they were rarely seen. Roar! Heaven Splitter's ears twitched. He suddenly lowered his head and rubbed his head against Yi Chen's shoulder. Yi Chen looked at Sky Splitter. You said that there's a legendary beast far away? On the Wilderness God continent, the beast's sense of smell and hearing were extremely powerful. Their perception was much stronger than that of Supremes. For example, Heaven Splitter could rely on its sense of smell to smell something thousands of miles away. Of course, this smell had to have been smelled before. Their hearing was even more powerful. They could hear the roars of beasts tens of thousands of miles away. Heaven Splitter nodded vigorously. Let's go, lead the way. A legendary beast was more useful than 10 quasi-legend ferocious beasts. After devouring it, Heaven Splitter would definitely become a quasi-legend ferocious beast. The growth and evolution of ferocious beasts were somewhat similar. They would devour the essence of others to make up for their own shortcomings. After chasing for 7 days and 7 nights, Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter finally caught up with the legendary beast. This legendary beast was shaped like a rhinoceros. Its shoulder height was 6 to 7 meters, and it was more than 10 meters long. Its body was covered in yellow stripes. Its tail was longer than its body, curling around its waist. It was estimated to be dozens of meters long. Yi Chen had seen the ferocious beast catalogue of the Wilderness God continent. He knew that this rhinoceros was called a plenilune beast. It was only a beginner legendary beast, much weaker than a peak legendary beast like the Gold Eater. Fortunately, it was a beginner legendary beast. If it was a mid-level legendary beast, Yi Chen would have to think twice. Roar. The plenilune beast's roar was very eerie. It didn't match its domineering appearance at all. It gave people a creepy feeling. Heaven Splitter's hair stood on end. Thud 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 thud, the plenilune beast turned into a cloud of dust and charged at Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter. The horn on its forehead was glowing. Scatter. Yi Chen shouted and dodged the plenilune beast's attack. Heaven Splitter was a little embarrassed. The plenilune beast seemed to be very unhappy that Heaven Splitter dared to provoke it. Its 10-meter-long tail was like a whip, lashing at Heaven Splitter's body. Heaven Splitter was sent flying. A deep wound appeared on its body, almost splitting it into two. Fortunately, most of the plenilune beast's attention was on Yi Chen, and its tail only took care of Heaven Splitter. Otherwise, Heaven Splitter would have died without a doubt. Yi Chen was a little annoyed that he had suffered a loss right from the start. He originally didn't plan to dodge, but the horn on the plenilune beast's forehead gave him a trace of threat. According to the beast catalogue, the plenilune beast's horn had the power of a mid-level legendary beast. He absolutely couldn't let it hit him. Heaven Splitter, stay away. Not daring to be careless, Yi Chen told Heaven Splitter to stay away from the battlefield. Woo, woo, woo. Heaven Splitter had lost his temper and quickly ran away, staggering a little. Pulling out the Heaven Sword, Yi Chen's aura locked onto the plenilune beast. Although the plenilune beast was a low-level legendary beast, it couldn't be underestimated. Firstly, the defense of its skin was very high, not any weaker than a mid-level legendary beast. Secondly, its horn attack was very powerful. It didn't need to come into direct contact with the enemy. As long as one was hit by its horn, it would be a disaster. Ta, 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 the plenilune beast never knew how to retreat. With its 4 hooves, it crazily charged at Yi Chen. Its speed was getting faster and faster, almost turning into a ray of light. Let's see how strong your ultimate attack is. Raising the Heaven Sword high, Yi Chen performed the Tyrant Sword style. Rumble. Rays of light exploded, and a transparent shockwave spread out, causing the ground to cave in. At the center of the shockwave, the plenilune beast lost its balance, and its huge body was sent flying. Of course, Yi Chen didn't have it easy either. His feet slid on the ground, causing the soil to roll up. What a powerful attack! Yi Chen's palm was a little numb. Facing the plenilune beast's strongest attack was indeed a little strenuous and unrewarding. Swish! Relying on his amazing control, Yi Chen forcefully reversed his retreat, and with a flash, he appeared beside the plenilune beast. Die! Ashes scattered, and Yi Chen's sword stabbed into the plenilune beast's abdomen. The plenilune beast was good at everything, except for its lack of agility. This was its biggest weakness, and also the most fatal one. Of course, when facing Yi Chen's sword burial style, there wasn't much of a difference whether it was agile or not, unless the opponent's bloodline contained space-time profound. Poochie. Sword chi shot out, and the plenilune beast's body was pierced by the sword chi. Then, with the piercing point as the center, the plenilune beast's body began to distort and collapse, turning into pieces of flesh. The sword burial style, which was infused with power profound, was terrifyingly powerful. It was the top of the 5 major sword moves. Putting the Heaven Sword back into its scabbard, Yi Chen gently landed on the ground and began to call Sky Splitter over. The moment a berserk beast died, its flesh and blood essence would be lost, and it must be devoured as soon as possible. Otherwise, it wouldn't be of much use. After all, berserk beasts were different from humans. Humans only needed to rely on the other party's flesh and blood to fill their stomachs. Chapter 1369. Raw. Heaven Splitter dashed over, picking up a piece of meat and gnawing on it. After a few bites, Heaven Splitter shook his head and tossed it away. The meat essence inside had already been absorbed. Brain, bone marrow, internal organs, muscles, every part of the full moon beast's body contained the essence of a legendary beast, especially the horn and tail, which contained the most powerful essence. After all, the full moon beast relied on these two to fight. As Sky Splitter crazily devoured the essence of the full moon beast's flesh and blood, Yi Chen also picked up a few pieces of meat and started to grill them. Soon, the smell of meat spread out, making one's mouth water. It's already evolving. While eating, Yi Chen watched Sky Splitter's evolution. Sky Splitter's evolution was very fast. Its body first swelled to 6 to 7 meters tall, and then it began to shrink. When it shrank to 4 meters, it stopped. At this time, its fur was longer, its eyes sharper, and its claws and teeth shone brighter. Its body stood still, but it gave off an oppressive feeling, as if it would pounce and bite at any time. Quasi-legendary beast. At this moment, Sky Splitter officially became a quasi-legendary beast. Obviously, this wasn't its limit. According to the records, the ancestor of the starry sky bearcat was a sacred beast, a demigod-level beast. With the ancestor's bloodline, the king of the starry sky bearcat would definitely reach the legendary level. As for whether it was a high-grade legendary beast or a pinnacle legendary beast, no one knew. It all depended on the purity of the ancestor's bloodline in Sky Splitter. Of course, although Sky Splitter only needed to devour the meat of stronger beasts to continue growing, the prerequisite was that it had a strong enough master. According to the previous rules, Sky Splitter needed to devour 10 beginner legendary beasts to become a beginner legendary beast, or 1 intermediate legendary beast. With Yi Chen's current strength, if he encountered intermediate legendary beasts, he wouldn't stand a chance. Some of the more powerful ones were even stronger than Yi Chen. Moreover, whether it could grow depended on the probability. The probability was high at the beginning, but it might not be as high at the later stages. The universe was peaceful. Ever since the Supremes of the Black Wind Stream and Mora Death Prison were released, the atmosphere in the universe became increasingly tense. This kind of pressure was like the undercurrent in the depths of the ocean. It wasn't visible on the surface, but once it erupted, it would engulf the entire world, and no one could escape. 9 Revolutions Star. The current ruler of the 9 Revolutions Star had changed from Supreme Martial Saint to the human demigod, White Pole Sword Saint. Is there still no news of Yi Chen? White Pole Sword Saint was very interested in Yi Chen. No. Zhenwu Supreme looked helpless. Yi Chen had been away for decades, and there had been no news of him. No one knew where he had gone. Although it was normal for a Supreme to wander for decades, centuries, or even millennia, Yi Chen was a peerless genius of the human clan. If he had been away for a long time, people would inevitably worry about his safety. There's no rush. Let him drift for a while longer. White Pole Sword Saint smiled. Suddenly, as if sensing something, the White Pole Sword Sage turned his head to look at the void. His eyes ignored the distance of space and soon saw a white-haired young man in the Black Tortoise Galaxy undergoing the Venerable Tribulation. It was Dugu Ju who was going through the Supreme Tribulation. On the 30th year after Yi Chen's disappearance, he finally became a Supreme. Good disciple, you've finally become a Supreme. Dugu Ju's master, Yin and Yang Blade Emperor, sensed Dugu Ju's breakthrough and couldn't help but smile. As an 8th layer Life and Death Heavenly Emperor, he was able to teach a Supreme. This was enough to leave his name in the annals of history. The next year, another young man broke through to the Supreme Realm. However, this young man was not from Human Race Alliance, but the Dark Goddess of Demons, God Bless Empress, Yi Chen's former opponent. God Bless Empress. No, it should be God Bless Supreme. It wasn't easy for her to become a Supreme, mainly because Yi Chen had left a huge shadow in her heart. If not for this shadow, she would have become a Supreme long ago. Dark Goddess, this bloodline is rare. I just happened to be lacking a partner. Giant Demon Venerable was a legendary Supreme who had come out of the Black Wind Stream. In the past decade, beautiful female emperors of various races had gathered in his palace. There were demons, evil spirit race, Yaksha race, and even humans, barbarian race, and spirit race. However, what he wanted the most was a female Supreme. Dark Witch Six-Winged Supreme was his most desired target. Unfortunately, Six-Winged Supreme was a Supreme after all. Although her strength was not as good as his, she had the protection of Sky Demon Venerable. For this reason, he had fought a great battle with Sky Demon Venerable. However, Sky Demon Venerable had the demonic sacred armor and bloodthirsty spear, so he was not his opponent. This time, Sky Demon Venerable wouldn't stop him, right? Across the boundless space-time, Giant Demon Venerable extended his hand toward God Bless Supreme. Bang! A bloodthirsty light flickered, and Giant Demon Venerable retracted his right hand, revealing a bloody scar on his palm. Sky Demon Venerable, you're courting death. Giant Demon Venerable flew into a rage out of humiliation. The other party had stopped him again and again. Did he really think he was a pushover? If it wasn't for the fact that his strength had yet to recover, he would have taken him down long ago. Giant Demon Venerable, if you want a female supreme, you can go capture those from other races. You better not have any ideas about my own race. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Sky Demon Venerable's voice traveled across space-time. Giant Demon Venerable said eerily, you can protect her for a while, but you can't protect her forever. I can't protect her forever, but someone can. If you don't care about your life, you can try. Sky Demon Venerable threw out a sentence. Oh, who is it? Demon Saint Goro. He has already officially gone into seclusion. No one knows when he will wake up again, and he won't care about these small things. Of course it's not Lord Demon Saint. There's no harm in telling you. The Great Demon King's bloodline has long been born. The Dark Witch and Dark Goddess will both be his partners. Therefore, you better put away your thoughts in case the Great Demon King's bloodline returns and kills you. Great Demon King's bloodline. The words Great Demon King's bloodline were like a curse that shocked Giant Demon Venerable. Since ancient times, as long as the Great Demon King's bloodline was born, the Dark Witch and Dark Goddess would always be his partners. No one dared to snatch them away. The other races might not know much about the Great Demon King's bloodline, but the Demon Venerables definitely knew. Humph, don't lie to me. Why haven't I heard about this? Of course I won't tell you this directly, but I have already told Lord Demon Saint. Humph, you win. I want to see what the Great Demon King's bloodline can do. I hope it won't disappoint me. The Giant Demon Venerable was a high-level legendary supreme at his peak. He was still a little unconvinced by the bloodline of the Great Demon King. In the entire universe, only Demon Sage Goro and Sword Sage Whitepole could make him completely convinced and not dare to provoke them. Female Supreme, since I can't touch my own race, I will capture those from other races. Giant Demon Venerable had an idea. He had plenty of time, and he would succeed eventually. Chapter 1370. 33 years after Yi Chen's disappearance, Sword Saint Bai Ji went into seclusion. He needed to recover to his peak and form his own body. Demigods losing their bodies didn't seem to affect them much, but it would limit their future development. 35 years after Yi Chen's disappearance, Yang Qingxian became a supreme. In just a few years, there were 3 more thousand-year supremes in the universe. They were Dugu Ju, Supreme God Bless, and Yang Qingxian. All 3 became supremes within 1,000 years. Becoming a supreme was a good thing, but it also brought a lot of trouble to Yang Qingxian. Among the supremes in the universe, more than 90% of them were men. There were very few women, which also led to female supremes being very popular. After all, everyone hoped that their partner would be a female supremes. That way, they could grow old together, and live until the end of time. Therefore, on the surface and in the dark, there were many supremes looking for Yang Qingxian, hoping that she could become their partner. Among them was a legendary supremes. Yang Qingxian rejected them all. Even if she wanted a partner, she wouldn't find these people. Many of them were hundreds of times older than her. From some secret information, it was known that Yang Qingxian was Yi Chen's confidant and good friend. Therefore, the majority of the supremes restrained themselves and wouldn't do anything forceful. Only Supreme Sky Hook, who had come out of Morrow Death Prison, didn't care who Yi Chen was. He had taken a liking to Yang Qingxian. This kind of beautiful woman was rarely seen in the world, and it was even rarer for her to cultivate to the supremes. If Six-Winged Supreme and God Bless Supreme were said to be outstanding bloodlines, then Yang Qingxian was said to be the best of all women. There was another reason why Supreme Sky Hook wanted Yang Qingxian as his partner. He didn't have any children. In fact, many Supremes would try to have children before they became Supremes. Once they became Supremes, their other half had to be Supremes as well. For example, if Yi Chen wanted children, then Shu Jing and Murong Qingcheng had to become Supremes. Otherwise, they couldn't get pregnant. Supreme Skyhook didn't know how long he could live. Therefore, before he died, he needed to raise a Supremes. It would be best if the Supremes were his children. Yang Qingxian, who looked cute and pretty, naturally became a hot commodity in the old man's eyes. Fortunately, Supreme True Marshal stopped Supreme Skyhook at the most crucial moment. A peerless genius like Yi Chen had walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He was usually gentle, but once someone angered him, they would have to suffer his wrath. If Yi Chen came back and found out that Supreme Skyhook forced Yang Qingxian to become his partner, he would undoubtedly fall out with Supreme Skyhook. Yi Chen might not be Supreme Skyhook's match in the beginning, but given enough time, Yi Chen would eventually surpass Supreme Skyhook. Whether it was Yi Chen suffering a loss or Yi Chen suppressing Supreme Skyhook, it was not something Supreme True Marshal wanted to see. The human race alliance had to maintain internal harmony. Supreme True Marshal used his divine artifact armor and the True Marshal divine truncheon to force Supreme Skyhook to retreat a few times and warn him several times. Damn it, I'm a legendary supremacy. How noble. How dare you stop me? As a legendary supremacy, Supreme Skyhook was very proud. He had been a peerless genius in the past. If he hadn't been imprisoned in the Morrow Death Prison, he might have even become a demigod. I'll go into seclusion to recover my power. When I come out, no one can stop me. Supreme Skyhook decided to go into seclusion. He had gathered enough resources to recover his power. On the 200th year of Yi Chen's disappearance, Emperor Arju successfully broke through and became a sovereign. He had crossed the threshold of 1,000 years sovereign to become a sovereign. This also represented his frightening potential. However, his brilliance had always been overshadowed by Yi Chen. As for Dugu Ju and Yang Qingxian becoming sovereigns within 1,000 years, it was actually out of many people's expectations. However, many things were uncertain. Becoming a sovereign also depended on one's temperament, and not just one's talent and comprehension. Arju, who had become a supremacy, was called one of the top 10 supremacies. As for Emperor Peerless, it was too exaggerated. So far, the human race had 3 youths who had become supremacies. They were all supremacies. Of course, other races also had youths who had become supremacies. There were 2 demons. One of them was a supreme god bless while the other one was older. He was over 2,000 years old. One from the evil spirit race. One from the Yaksha race. 2 from the barbarian race. 2 from the giant race. Originally, there should have been more than 2 demons. It was the same for the evil spirit race and the Yaksha race. There should have been more than one supremacy. Unfortunately, their top geniuses had all died in the Shura world arena. The one who killed them was Yi Chen. Yi Chen had stepped on their bodies to become a supremacy. Apart from the new supremacy of the demons, the number of supremacies in the universe had increased from 1 to 11. If Supremacy Evil Star and Yi Chen, who had been missing for many years, were added to the total number of supremacies. If Yi Chen was the sun, then they were the stars, blooming with their own light. However, few people knew that there was another sun blooming with dazzling light. Yi Chen was the white sun, and the other party was the black sun, the bloodline of the great demon king. There are so many supremacies appearing all of a sudden. Are they trying to make the universe even more chaotic? Some supremacies were secretly discussing. There were simply too many supremacies. In the past, it was already not bad to have one appear in an era. This time, there were more than 10 of them. The supremacies are the trump cards. I'm afraid there will be more young supremacies in the future. Yes, that's for sure. The supremacies are just the first batch. Our potential has been exhausted. It's up to these young supremacies to perform. Wilderness God Continent. In the past 200 years, Yi Chen had already fused the defensive sword stance with the power ultimacy. He had even successfully fused the most difficult illusory sword stance with the power ultimacy. During this period, the challenge of the Wilderness God Tower was carried out again. This time, Yi Chen was still first in the tower. The defensive sword stance fused with the power ultimacy was too powerful. He might not be able to defeat the first demon venerable with the Great Demon King bloodline in a one-on-one fight, but he was undoubtedly the strongest in the tower. With the defensive sword stance, he reached the 788th level, while the first demon venerable reached the 787th level. They were still one level apart. As for the third place, there was a huge gap between the two. It was unknown when it started, but the two had already surpassed the others. However, among the top 5, only Yi Chen was not a legendary supremacy. Even Kang Xueli and War Bear had become legendary supremacies. It was shocking to have such strength without becoming a legendary supremacy. However, there were also many limitations. After becoming a legendary supremacy, one could continue to develop. But before becoming a legendary supremacy, one's foundation was too weak. There was also a lack of accumulation. It was not obvious at the moment, but as time passed, it would become more and more obvious. Chapter 1371. Could it be that if my sword intent cannot be improved, my martial yuan soul cannot be developed? This was the second time Yi Chen was trying to comprehend the word martial. Unfortunately, although his two sword intents had improved, there seemed to be no end to the peak of the 8th order. He couldn't see the barrier to the 9th order no matter what. On the other hand, his radiant sword intent was gradually catching up, reaching the late stage of the 8th order. It was only 2 levels lower than the Immortal sword intent and Destruction sword intent. I'll see next time. If my sword intent still cannot be improved, I can forget about it. It was impossible for Yi Chen to waste the opportunity to comprehend the word martial on his sword intent. Ever since the 5 sword moves fused with the power profoundness, his improvement was minimal. With so much time, he could create other sword arts, such as the yin-yang sword art, or the earth, water, fire, and wind sword arts. One should not think that creating new sword arts was useless. At the legendary supremacy realm, if one wanted to go further and become a demigod, one had to have a deep understanding of martial arts. Otherwise, there was no way to improve one's martial yuan soul. The reason why there was the word martial in front of the martial yuan soul was because the martial yuan soul was not only the condensation of essence, energy, and spirit, it was also the foundation of one's martial Tao. Soon, it was the 3rd time he attempted the Desolate God Tower. On the 788th level, Yi Chen and Desolate Spirit were entangled. The blade art of this level of Desolate Spirit was boundlessly tyrannical, and was even more subtle in the feminine aspect. However, Yi Chen's sword art had also reached the pinnacle. It should be known that 100 years ago, his 5 sword styles had already been infused with the profound of power at the Great Completion realm. After 100 years, although their might hadn't increased much, be it in terms of power exertion or technique, they had all reached the realm of practice makes perfect, and practice makes perfect. Without a trace of smoke or fire, Yi Chen deflected Desolate Spirit's saber strike after strike, gradually turning his advantage into victory. Finally, he slashed his opponent's throat, defeating him. The 789th level, the 790th level, the 791st level. Finally, Yi Chen reached his limit. He stopped at the 792nd level. Exhaling, Yi Chen walked out of the Desolate God Tower. Yi Chen, don't be discouraged. Try harder next time. Lan Yu comforted Yi Chen. Yi Chen smiled. It's fine. It's within my expectations. On the Crystal Stele, the first demon venerable with the Great Demon King bloodline was not him. He had already reached the 795th level, and there was no sign of him stopping. The 3rd place was still Evil Star with a score of 770. The 4th place was Kang Xueli with 755, and the 5th place was War Bear with 750. In terms of results, the first demon venerable and Yi Chen were on the same level. Evil Star was on his own level, while Kang Xueli and Battle Bear were on the same level. However, It seemed that the first demon venerable was exerting his strength and had the tendency to occupy a level by himself. As for Evil Star, he was temporarily unable to surpass Yi Chen. The Great Demon King bloodline is too sick. The bloodline of the Great Demon King had long been exposed. War Bear said to Kang Xueli. Kang Xueli nodded. He is constantly improving at a high speed. I really don't know where his limits are. How can there be such a terrifying bloodline in this world? At the beginning, everyone was skeptical about the Great Demon King bloodline. However, after knowing the first demon venerable's age, they were all speechless. The crucial point was that not only was the first demon venerable's bloodline invincible, his perception was also extremely terrifying. He simply had no flaws. Perhaps, his only flaw was that he was too perfect. The 796th level, the 797th level, the 800th level. When the first devil venerable reached the 800th level, the leaders of the 5 tribes glanced at each other in dismay. The 800th level was another level. Every 100th level was a bottleneck, and the desolate spirit would become much more monstrous. Finally, the first demon venerable stopped at the 802nd level. After walking out of the desolate god tower, the first demon venerable ignored everyone else. He looked at Yi Chen and said, "I've surpassed you. Congratulations." Yi Chen was neither sad nor happy. The first demon venerable said with a smile that didn't look like a smile, "After being surpassed by me, you will no longer have the possibility of surpassing me. While you are improving, I am also improving. Furthermore, the extent of my improvement is even greater. How would you know if you don't try? Alright, I will wait and see. However, in my heart, I don't wish for you to be surpassed by me so quickly. That would be too boring." The first demon venerable laughed and left. Ying Lai Xiong sighed. The competition between these two geniuses had shocked them to their core. It was too exaggerated. Fortunately, Lan Yu had finally made it to the top 9, earning a portion of time for the Unfalling Eagle tribe. Including Yi Chen's portion, it was still 2 portions. As expected, my sword intent didn't break through to the 9th level. In the courtyard, Yi Chen exited from the strange space with the word martial. He frowned and then relaxed. The peak of the 8th level was called the limit, and it seemed to be not far from the 9th level. However, only by truly trying would one know that the distance between the peak of the 8th level and the 9th level was still a long way. The limit was just a path with no end. Without special opportunities or great enlightenment, one might not be able to reach the end of the path in his entire life. The only consolation was that his sword intent had also reached the peak of the 8th level. With the 3 peak of the 8th level sword spirits gathered in his ocean of soul, Yi Chen's body had a slight change. His entire ocean of soul was like a glowing ball of light, transparent and translucent. It was hard for him to have any distracting thoughts. Any distracting thoughts that might affect the growth of his sword art could no longer exist. Other than that, the 3 great sword spirits resonated with each other, increasing his speed of improvement drastically. There was no end to the peak of the 8th level, but the further one went, the more powerful it was. For example, one had just reached the peak of the 8th level, while the other had been there for a long time. Naturally, the latter's sword intent would be stronger. On the grassland, the sword wind was howling. From time to time, the sword light would flash, leaving sword marks one after another on the grassland. A silhouette pierced through the sword wind and landed on the ground. It was none other than Yi Chen. 10 years have passed, and the power of my sword intent has increased by 10 times. The same peak of the 8th level, but the difference is too big. To be honest, Yi Chen was also very surprised, but then he understood. The peak of the 8th level should be a process of accumulation. Without enough accumulation, one would not be able to reach the 9th level, but with enough accumulation, one would be able to reach the 9th level naturally. According to the legends, the peak of the 9th level sword intent contained a trace of the sword god's power. This was not without reason. If the peak of the 8th level was this big, then the 9th level would be unimaginably terrifying. Of course, not to mention the peak of the 9th level, not many people could reach the 9th level. Among the legendary supremes, There were only a few who could reach the 9th level with their martial intent. Those who could reach the 9th level were all at the peak of the legendary supremes. Chapter 1372. In these 10 years, Yi Chen's sword intent had increased tenfold. After 50 years, Yi Chen's sword intent had increased by a total of 50 times, roughly doubling every year. The 3-peak 8-step sword souls resonated at a speed that was dozens of times faster than 2-peak 8-step sword souls resonating. As the sword intent increased, Yi Chen noticed that the black strands on his yuanshan were showing signs of disintegration. Unfortunately, the speed was too slow. Fortunately, the sword intent was increasing every day. One day, it would reach the 9th step and possess unimaginable power. Killing the black strands on his yuanshan would be as easy as flipping one's palm. The improvement of the immortal sword intent had strengthened his immortal sword body by 50 times. Adding on the fact that he had absorbed the essence of 10 first and second rank supreme swords in the past 200 years, his immortal sword body had reached the 12th layer, allowing him to resist the attacks of a low-level legendary sovereign without suffering any damage. Unfortunately, the number of supreme swords was limited. Yi Chen had a feeling that if he wanted to break through to the 13th level, he would need to absorb the essence of at least 100 first or second grade supreme swords. In the end, the immortal sword body was still inferior to the 9 transformation golden body in some aspects. After all, although the 9 transformation golden body's cultivation speed was slower, it didn't have such harsh requirements. Sky Splitter, let's go hunting. Right now, no matter where he went, he would bring Sky Splitter with him. Compared to warriors, the evolution of fierce beasts was both easy and difficult. It was easy because they only needed to devour life forms that were more powerful than them to evolve. But it was difficult because without external help, how could they fight against life forms that were more powerful than them? Other fierce beasts grew step by step, but Sky Splitter was like a rocket, rising in a straight line. In these 200 years, Sky Splitter had devoured 6 beginner legendary beasts and wasn't far from advancing. Carrying Yi Chen on its back, Sky Splitter flew out as fast as a meteor. Sky Splitter, hurry up. On this day, Yi Chen discovered black smoke lingering in the air. There were even traces of flames burning within the black smoke. If Yi Chen's guess was right, the black smoke should have been left behind by the legendary beast, the Black Smoke Beast. The Black Smoke Beast liked to stay in the underground magma. It would only come to the surface when it was hungry. Relying on Heaven Splitter's sense of smell to lock onto the black smoke, Yi Chen quickly spotted the Black Smoke Beast. The Black Smoke Beast was several times larger than Heaven Splitter. Its entire body was pitch black, like charcoal. However, there were faint cracks on the surface of its skin. The black smoke was coming from these cracks, and the smell was extremely dense. Roar! Black smoke billowed as the Black Smoke Beast roared at Yi Chen and Sky Splitter. Then, it glared at them with an emotionless, ominous glint in its eyes. Sky Splitter, watch from the side. Yi Chen jumped down from Sky Splitter's back and unsheathed Sky Sword. Ear-piercing sonic booms rang out continuously. The black smoke was pulled into a straight line. The Black Smoke Beast dashed forward and was less than 10 meters away from Yi Chen. Its mouth was wide open, and within it was scarlet magma. Berry. Without holding back, Yi Chen directly used the strongest berry sword style, piercing through the Black Smoke Beast's body. Then, the sword energy twisted and destroyed the Black Smoke Beast's vitality. Currently, Yi Chen only needed one sword to deal with a beginner legendary beast. In the blink of an eye, a few years had passed. He was only 1 or 2 beginner legendary beasts away from Sky Splitter's advancement. Of course, the advancement depended on the probability. If he was lucky, the number would be about the same. Unknowingly, the man and the beast arrived near the Desolate God secret territory. They were tracking a legendary beast. The surroundings were quiet, as though all sound had been cut off by an invisible hand. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no danger near the Desolate God secret territory, Yi Chen definitely wouldn't take the risk. Sky Splitter, can you smell the other party's scent? Yi Chen lowered his head and asked Sky Splitter. Sky Splitter's expression was a little uneasy. It was unknown whether it was because they were near the desolate god's secret territory or because their target was a mid-level legendary beast. To deal with a beginner legendary beast, Yi Chen only needed one sword. To deal with a mid-level legendary beast, Yi Chen would have to go all out. Although his sword intent had increased by more than 50 times, to be honest, it wasn't a big deal. If his combat power had increased by more than 50 times, it would be better. Increasing his sword intent by more than 50 times would only increase Yi Chen's combat power by about 10 times. Of course, this was mainly because the time was too short. If Yi Chen was given 1,000 years, his sword intent would increase by 1,000 times, which would be about 200 times in terms of combat power. A mid-level legendary beast was rather rare. If he didn't seize this opportunity, it would be difficult to see one in the future. Therefore, Yi Chen was prepared to take a gamble. Even if he couldn't kill the other party, he would at least slice off a piece of flesh from the other party. A piece of flesh from a mid-level legendary beast was roughly equivalent to a beginner legendary beast. Relying on the starry sky bear dog king's unique sense of smell, Sky Splitter carried Yi Chen and quickly scurried out. It had smelled the scent. Not long after, the two of them saw a cave. The cave was about a few meters wide, but it was very deep. It was pitch black without a trace of light. Hiss 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 hiss. A storm-like hissing sound could be heard as a black shadow slowly slithered out. It was a huge grayish-black python with dozens of sharp horns on its head. Its head was round like a ball. Middle-level legendary beast Iron Star Snake. The snake coiled its body and raised its head high. Its two scarlet tongues flickered as fast as lightning. A battle was about to break out. All of a sudden, the ground beneath Yi Chen and Sky Splitter suddenly exploded as a long tail broke out from the ground and curled towards the two. It turned out that the Iron Star Snake had already drilled its tail into the ground to ambush Yi Chen and Sky Splitter. So experienced. Yi Chen didn't notice when the Iron Star Snake had drilled its tail into the ground. Caught off guard, he and Sky Splitter were coiled by the snake's tail and couldn't move. In the next moment, the Iron Star Snake's round head scurried over and bit at Yi Chen first. The other party was a mid-level legendary beast. With a light bite, its teeth could probably pierce through Yi Chen's immortal sword physique. Coupled with its terrifying poison, Yi Chen would die without a doubt. Get lost. Although Yi Chen couldn't break free, he still had the Netherworld Sacred Eye. A surge of soul force mixed with Hell's will gushed out and hit the Iron Star Snake's head. The Iron Star Snake's body stiffened as if it was paralyzed. Seizing this opportunity, Yi Chen and Sky Splitter instantly broke free. Hiss hiss. The Iron Star Snake soon recovered and angrily pounced at Yi Chen again. Ding, dang, dang. One man and one snake started to fight. What Yi Chen didn't know was that his battle with the Iron Star Snake had already fallen into the eyes of a horrifying creature. This creature was standing on a high mountain with a baboon-like body and a pair of blood-red eyes. If Yi Chen saw this creature, he would definitely recognize it. When the leaders of the 5 tribes tore the time-space and sent the gold-eating beasts into the desolate god's secret domain, there was a scene on the other side of the time-space tunnel, which scared the gold-eating beasts so much that they were shivering. Chapter 1373. The Iron Star Snake was very powerful. Although Yi Chen's sword burial form could injure it, it could only leave a bowl-sized bloody hole on its body. Unfortunately, the Iron Star Snake was a beast that contained the bloodline of time and space ultimacy. Yi Chen's sword burial form couldn't be effective every time. Out of the 5 times, it was dodged at least 4 times. The sword light crisscrossed and landed on the Iron Star Snake's body in a flash. In terms of power, chaotic form wasn't as powerful as tyrant sword form or sword burial form. However, it was undoubtedly the most comprehensive attack. Facing this attack, the Iron Star Snake knew it couldn't avoid it. Therefore, it coiled itself together to reduce the area of attack. Swoosh 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 swoosh, streaks of bloody marks appeared on the Iron Star Snake's body. It was as if it had been strangled by a sharp fishing net as it screamed in pain. Tyrant sword form. Seizing the opportunity, Yi Chen raised his heaven sword and slashed down vertically. His target was the Iron Star Snake's spherical head. Catcher. The heaven sword was extremely sharp. Together with tyrant sword form, it was as if it could split the sky and earth. Half of the iron star snake's head was split open, revealing the grey brain inside. Danger. After heavily injuring the opponent with one slash, Yi Chen didn't lose his cool. When he sensed the incoming danger, his figure flashed and flew out diagonally. Poochie. The next moment, a black shadow flashed by. It was the iron star snake's tail. The iron star snake was a mid-tier legend rank beast. Its tail was its sharp weapon. Its piercing power was terrifying and was enough to pierce through Yi Chen's immortal sword body. The head that was almost split closed up. The iron star snake's eyes exploded with ferocious light. Its head swelled and opened its mouth, shooting a black line at Yi Chen. It was venom. Yi Chen quickly dodged. Next, the iron star snake attacked Yi Chen with its venom like a storm. The venom was extremely toxic. When it landed on the ground, it would evaporate and turn into gas. Yi Chen, who had accidentally inhaled some of the gas, felt dizzy and powerless. If it wasn't for the immortal force eliminating the gas in his body in time, Yi Chen might have failed miserably. How troublesome. This was the first time that Yi Chen had fought against a mid-level legendary level wild beast. Thus, he found that his offensive power was not strong enough. Although the wild beast did not possess a suit of supreme armor or sacred armor, its defensive power was not to be underestimated. Without a certain level of offensive power, it would be hard for him to kill it. Woo 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 woo. In the distance, Heaven Splitter suddenly called out in a low voice. Yi Chen's face paled. He knew what Sky Split meant. A terrifying wild beast was rushing over. According to Sky Split, this wild beast was even stronger than the gold-devouring beast. What kind of dire beast is stronger than gold-eating beasts? The leaders of the 5 major tribes were all peak legendary supremes, and the gold-eating beast was also a peak legendary ferocious beast, but it was stronger than the leaders of the 5 major tribes. Could it be a quasi-holy beast that was stronger than it? Yi Chen was shocked. A demigod-level wild beast was a holy beast. Once a wild beast became a holy beast, it would have a spiritual wisdom not inferior to a martial artist. It would become a truly terrifying existence. Although a quasi-holy beast was countless times weaker than a holy beast, it was still extremely terrifying. A peak legendary ferocious beast was no different from a child in front of it. As the gale descended, Yi Chen finally caught sight of this terrifying beast. It was a baboon-like beast, and its blood-red eyes were different from ordinary beasts. It already possessed a considerable amount of intelligence. Creatures with intelligence normally wouldn't appear too ferocious. However, upon seeing this baboon-like beast, Yi Chen's scalp went numb, and his body stiffened. The other party's blood-red eyes contained boundless craftiness and brutality, bringing about boundless negative emotions. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that a single glance from this baboon-like beast would cause the soul of an ordinary supremacy to crumble and die. In almost an instant, Yi Chen woke up. Fortunately, he had 3 peak rank 8 sword souls. His sea of soul could not contain any distracting thoughts or negative emotions. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to wake up in such a short time. Rumble. The baboon-like wild beast couldn't really rush over. When it was only 100 miles away from Yi Chen and the iron star snake, its whole body bounced back as if there was an invisible force obstructing it. Because of this, the baboon-like wild beast was very angry. It charged forward again and again, but it was bounced back every time. The iron star snake was already paralyzed with fear. The invisible force that obstructed the baboon-like wild beast couldn't isolate its aura. Therefore, other than the baboon-like wild beast not being able to come over, the pressure it emitted was real. There wasn't a trace of falsehood or weakening. In the distance, Sky Splitting was also lying on the ground, shivering. It was said that when a weak wild beast met a strong one, it would directly lie on the ground. Even if the other party wanted to eat it, it wouldn't dare to run away and let the other party tear it apart and devour it. Yi Chen stood there blankly as if he was also scared silly. In fact, that wasn't the case. Although the baboon-like wild beast's pressure on Yi Chen was very strong, Yi Chen wasn't a wild beast after all, so the pressure he felt was countless times smaller. Moreover, Yi Chen's soul was very strong. His Sea of Soul contained 3 peak rank 8 sword souls, and he also had the Netherworld Sacred Eye that contained the Hell's Will. Therefore, he always had a strong immunity to pressure. He stood there motionlessly because he felt an invisible and formless will fluctuation. This fluctuation was very obscure, and ordinary people couldn't feel it at all. The reason why Yi Chen could feel it was because the black strands on his martial Dao Yuanshan were actually disintegrating. It seemed that this fluctuation of will could innately kill evil power. The black strands on Yi Chen's martial Dao Yuanshan were countless evil power tangled together and condensed into a chaotic will. This chaotic will obstructed Yi Chen's progress. It was like an invisible net that firmly trapped Yi Chen. If Yi Chen's sword intent could reach rank 9, he would naturally be able to kill this chaotic will, but the rank 9 sword intent was far beyond his reach. But now, the chaotic will was actually disintegrating quickly. Could this be the will of the desolate god? Yi Chen had once felt the will of a true god. That was in hell, the will of the puppet true god. This was the second time. To him, the two wills were equally strong, even stronger than the heavenly Tao law. Perhaps only the universe's will could resist it. Right, the hell's will is the negative side of the universe's will. It is an equal existence to the universe's will. Why can't the hell's will disintegrate the chaotic will? Doubt rose in Yi Chen's mind. But soon, the doubt disappeared. Yi Chen guessed that the Netherworld Sacred Eye was a kind of talent ability. Although he could use it, he couldn't separate the hell's will. Perhaps he could do it one day, but not now. He still couldn't control the hell's will. The baboon charged again and again. Finally, it gave up. It glared at the human and the two beasts, turned around, and quickly disappeared. Heh! The desolate god's will disappeared. Yi Chen frowned. How do I trigger the desolate god's will? Yi Chen didn't dare to attack that invisible force like the baboon. The baboon was fine, but it didn't mean that he would be fine. Chapter 1374. In the end, Yi Chen decided to take the risk. Reaching the peak was his goal. If he did not dare to take this risk, what right did he have to reach the peak? Raising the heaven sword with his right hand, Yi Chen suddenly waved the sword. The sword chi was like a waterfall, sweeping 100 miles away. Boom! The sword chi clashed with an invisible force and disappeared instantly. No danger. It's just that this desolate god's will is so weak. Yi Chen let out a sigh of relief at first, but then he frowned slightly. It was obvious that the desolate god's will was much stronger than the sword chi's. According to the desolate god's will that was triggered by the baboon, it would only take half a day for the martial Yuanshan's chaotic will to be eliminated. But now, the time had to be delayed by 1,000,000 times. No hurry. This is also a test for me. For Yi Chen, this was indeed a test. In order to trigger the desolate god's will, he had to attack the invisible force, which was the barrier of desolate god's secret territory. This was not a short-term project, but a long-term project. During this period, he had to attack at least 1,000,000,000 times. Of course, before this project, he had to take care of the Iron Star Snake first. The Iron Star Snake was a ferocious beast. Facing a superior, its instinct would make it surrender. Facing someone similar to it, it would never retreat. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of metal clashing was endless, from morning to night, and from night to the next morning. The battle between the man and the snake lasted for a whole week. After a week, Yi Chen's strength had declined quite a bit. In the wilderness god continent, not eating meat for a week was equivalent to an ordinary person not eating for a day. Fortunately, the Iron Star Snake was not much better off. In terms of battle power, it was a bit lower than Yi Chen. Although the wounds on its body could heal very quickly, it would still consume a lot of energy. Another 3 days passed. The man and the snake had been fighting for a whole 10 days. Die. Yi Chen gathered his remaining strength and pierced through the Iron Star Snake's head with the sword burial style. As the snake weakened, its defense had obviously decreased by a lot. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have been able to pierce through it. In the end, the Iron Star Snake still died in Yi Chen's hands. If it were not a ferocious beast, it would be impossible for Yi Chen to kill it. Sky-splitting, let's eat together. Yi Chen was starving and exhausted. He called out to Sky Splitter and started to roast the Iron Star snake meat. The aroma of the meat filled the air as Yi Chen wolfed down the meat. On the other side, Heaven Splitter was advancing. The Iron Star snake was a mid-tier legend rank ferocious beast, while Sky Splitter was a quasi-legend ferocious beast. The gap between the two was immeasurable. Sky Splitter had only swallowed 2 pieces of flesh, and its body had already undergone drastic changes. Heaven Splitter's feet had grown twice as big as before. His 4 limbs were like 4 pillars, and his claws were as sharp as blades. His fur had also grown thicker and darker. His back was elongating as if there was a dragon swimming on it. His ears were also sharper than before, and his eyes were like 2 large diamonds. His pupils were like a hexagram, and they were constantly spinning. On his forehead, there was a golden mark that wasn't too obvious. It turned out that this golden mark was also a hexagram, a golden hexagram. Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, roar. The moment his advancement was completed, Heaven Splitter faced the sky and roared. The roar of a legend-rank ferocious beast reverberated, emitting a threatening pressure. At this moment, Heaven Splitter's shoulder was 6 meters tall, and his body was more than 10 meters long. He looked mighty and majestic, and it would probably be more comfortable to sit on. Opening his mouth and sticking out his tongue, Heaven Splitter ran to Yi Chen's side and used his tongue to lick Yi Chen's face. This represented his loyalty and love for his master. Go to the side and eat the rest. Yi Chen waved his hand. He wanted to sleep. Under the deep starry sky, the bonfire flickered. Yi Chen lay on Heaven Splitter's body, sleeping comfortably. Heaven Splitter's eyes were closed, and they would occasionally open a slit, emitting a sharp and cold light as he vigilantly scanned the surroundings. Early the next morning, Yi Chen stretched his body and got up. After eating some barbecued meat, Yi Chen pulled out the sky sword and started attacking the barrier of the desolate god-secret realm. As for Heaven Splitter, it had nothing to do, so it went out to hunt. As a primary legend-rank ferocious beast, its strength was different from before. Of course, it wouldn't run too far. As the days passed, the black strands on Yi Chen's martial Dao Yuan spirit gradually decreased. Repeating the same action every day was, to be honest, very boring. It was even more boring than secluded cultivation. Secluded cultivation was actually a state of selflessness, where one would lose track of time and not feel bored. In the first 5 years, Yi Chen only swung the sky sword mechanically. One day, he suddenly discovered that his attack power had increased by a lot. After careful observation, he discovered that his heart sword realm had actually increased by a lot. If he was at the initial heart sword realm before, he had now reached the peak of the initial heart sword realm. It was said that Kang Xueli of the Redbud Flower tribe was at the peak of the intermediate heart force realm, higher than the majority of legend rank supremes. The heart is the embodiment of a person's inner self. Not being troubled by boredom, one's heart force would increase imperceptibly. Feeling the improvement of the heart sword realm, Yi Chen put more effort into it. 10 years passed. Yi Chen suddenly felt that the whole world had become much clearer. He was looking at everything in the world with a detached attitude. Vaguely, he seemed to be able to see the rules of the operation of everything in the world. Intermediate heart sword realm. Unknowingly, Yi Chen's heart sword realm took a big step forward. Heart force was the hardest to improve. It was different from cultivation or martial arts. The latter too would slowly become stronger with the accumulation of time. Heart force, on the other hand, had nothing to do with time. Some old fellows' heart force was far inferior to the younger generation. Heart higher than the sky, this was a derogatory term, but also a commendatory one. The former represented reaching beyond one's reach, while the latter represented having high aspirations and having the confidence to surpass everything. Intermediate heart sword realm. It turns out that my sword arts still have some minute flaws. Reaching the intermediate heart sword realm, Yi Chen's vision of sword arts had increased by 10 times. With a single thought, the flaws of sword arts could not be hidden. The same supreme sword art, excluding the factor of heart force amplification, was displayed with the same power. But with the higher the heart sword realm, the more ingenious the effects could be displayed, the clearer the grasp of timing, the changes in the enemy's mentality, and the essence of sword arts. Soon, the black strands have already disappeared by 90%. In the blink of an eye, 15 years passed. The black strands on Yi Chen's yuanshan were only left with the last tenth. This tenth of the black strands entangled in the body of the yuanshan, and it was very difficult to get rid of them. But as the will of the desolate god swept through, these black strands were inevitable. Sooner or later, they would be swept out and wiped clean. When the black strands completely disappeared, it would be the time when Yi Chen broke through to the silver rank yuanshan and rushed to the legendary rank. Chapter 1375. In the Redbud Flower tribe, War Bear, who was as strong as a bear, was fighting with Kang Xueli. The two of them felt the pressure from the three people in front of them, so they worked even harder in their usual cultivation. It could be seen that the two of them had improved greatly. Their strength had increased by at least 100-fold. The last time they attempted the Wilderness God Tower, the two of them had just become supremes. Their silver-ranked martial spirit was still very weak, so they were only able to reach the 750th and 755th levels. This time, they were confident that they could reach the 770th level, or even higher. Kang Xueli's figure flickered as she lightly pressed her palm against the War Bear. This was her secret art, falling flower palm. It seemed to have no power, but it was extremely overbearing. War Bear crossed his arms, and a dazzling light bloomed from his body. Sun Tyrant body. Boom. War Bear was sent flying. The falling flower palm's tyrannical power was something that one wouldn't know until they experienced it themselves. Climbing out of the pit, War Bear smiled and said, "What a great falling flower palm. It contains the will of the heavens. I can't dodge it at all. Flowers bloom and wilt." This was the cycle of the heavenly Tao, and it could not be changed. Kang Xueli's falling flower palm contained the charm of this cycle of life and death. Of course, the most important thing was the heart power. Without the heart power, the falling flower palm would lose a lot of its brilliance. Your Sun Tyrant body should have cultivated to the 9 Suns realm, right? Kang Xueli asked. Zhonxiong grinned and said, "I just broke through not long ago. I'm only at the initial 9 Yang stage." The Sun Tyrant body was a body-refining technique passed down by the Battle Pagoda tribe since ancient times. The highest realm was the 10 Yang realm. According to the records of the technique, once one reached the 10 Yang realm, they could even resist the attack of a demigod. This was also the technique that the Battle Pagoda tribe relied on to survive. Basically, everyone practiced it. Currently, the one with the highest achievement was the leader of the Battle Pagoda tribe, Titan. His Sun Tyrant body had already been cultivated to the late 9 Yang realm, which allowed him to resist the attack of a high-level legendary sovereign. Kang Xueli nodded. Her falling flower palm couldn't do anything to an early-stage 9 Yang cultivator combined with a saint artifact armor. Other than the first demon venerable with the great demon king bloodline, perhaps even Yi Chen wouldn't be able to do anything to him. This was the fissomeness of a physique tempering technique. "I wonder what level they are at," War Bear suddenly said. Kang Xueli pondered and said, "In terms of talent and comprehension, Evil Star is on par with us. He isn't that powerful. The truly powerful ones are the first demon venerable and sword venerable. You can't look at them with common sense." Sword Sovereign was Yi Chen's title. There was no sword sovereign more powerful than Yi Chen on the entire Wild's God continent. Most of the leaders of Grade 7 tribes were no match for Yi Chen. The first demon sovereign has the bloodline of the great demon king. His potential is limitless, and he is constantly improving. The next time we meet, he will probably be even more powerful. I don't have the confidence to compete with him. In my opinion, the Sword Sovereign will also be gradually surpassed by him. War Bear sighed. Kang Xueli shook her head. That's not necessarily true. Don't underestimate Sword Sovereign. He's not a legendary sovereign yet, but he already has such terrifying strength. Once he becomes a legendary sovereign, even the first demon sovereign might not be able to suppress him. In my opinion, it won't be long before Sword Sovereign becomes a legendary sovereign and fights against the first demon sovereign. Kang Xueli's eyes were very sharp. People with strong mental strength were able to see many things. Oh, if Sword Sovereign can become a legendary sovereign, it will indeed be worth watching. However, I still don't think that he will succeed. Just like you and me, even if he becomes a legendary sovereign, he will still need a long time to consolidate. In Yunzhong village, the first demon sovereign's courtyard was shrouded in darkness. It was so dark that there wasn't a trace of light, and there was no fluctuation. It was like a pool of stagnant water. Some people in Yunzhong village were frightened when they saw the darkness. Because the darkness didn't just cover the courtyard, it extended to the surrounding areas. Some sovereigns accidentally fell into the darkness and got lost. If Yun Piaomiao hadn't discovered them, the consequences would have been unimaginable. For this reason, Yun Piaomiao had set up a few layers of formations to prevent the darkness from spreading. On a tall pavilion in the center of Yunzhong village, Yun Piaomiao thought to herself, what a terrifying bloodline of the great demon king. Fortunately, he isn't from the Huangshan continent. He can't be a threat to us. Otherwise, we would have to get rid of him as soon as possible to prevent future troubles. To the people outside, the courtyard of the first demon sovereign was shrouded in darkness. However, inside the courtyard, one would realize that it wasn't darkness at all. Instead, it was light. Darkness and light interweaved together. It was impossible to tell which was which. Perhaps, darkness and light were relative and couldn't exist independently. In the spacious room, the first demon sovereign stretched out his right hand. A ball of light appeared on his palm and slowly rotated. Outside the ball of light, it was getting darker and darker. It was so dark that even one's gaze would be sucked into it. Only absolute darkness can create absolute light. However, just light and darkness aren't enough. There must be a strong force to push them together. The first demon sovereign's palm closed slightly. The ball of light became smaller and smaller. It seemed like there was an extremely strong force suppressing the ball of light. As the ball of light shrank, the surrounding darkness became denser. It had already reached an incomprehensible realm. The number of black strands decreased until there was only one strand left. This strand of black strand had pierced through the spine of the martial Yuan Shen. It was the strongest chaotic will. Being swept by the will of the desolate god, the black strand of black strand roared unwillingly. Within this chaotic will were the remnant thoughts of countless evil spirits. After fusing together, it became an even more vicious demonic will. Seriously speaking, the chaotic will was an existence on the same level as the universe will, hell will, and true God will. However, this chaotic will wasn't pure. It was formed after birth. Therefore, it couldn't fight against the will of the desolate god. Crackle. The black strand of black strand let out a series of crackling sounds. It became dimmer and thinner. When another wave of desolate gods will swept over, the black strand of black strand finally dissipated. So easy. When the black strand of black strand disappeared, Yi Chen felt like a huge rock had been lifted off his shoulders. He felt relaxed from inside out. It was an unprecedented relaxation. Martial Dao Yuan Soul, evolve. Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shen had long accumulated enough. It was because of the existence of the chaotic will that he couldn't break through to the silver class. Now that the hidden danger was gone, Yi Chen immediately chose to break through. Wang. Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shen floated out, emitting an intense bronze light. The bronze light gradually transformed, giving birth to strands of silver. As the silver light increased, the aura of Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shen grew stronger. With every breath, it would be 10 times stronger. From afar, Heaven Splitter watched Yi Chen quietly. It understood that its master was about to break through, and he would become even stronger. After an unknown period of time, Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shen had turned into a pure silver color, as if it was made of illusory silver. Waves of energy spread out, and the ground instantly caved in, forming a huge pit. Finally, legend rank. Yi Chen opened his eyes, and the silver martial Yuan Shen returned to his body. Chapter 1376. The martial Dao Yuan spirit was divided into 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. At the bronze level, the lifespan of an honorable would be greatly increased. It would not be a problem to live for hundreds of thousands of years, or even 1,000,000 years. At the silver level, the lifespan would be greatly increased. One could easily live for more than 1,000,000 years, with the longest record being 5,000,000 years. As for the gold level, this was the martial Dao Yuan spirit of a demigod. It had the property of eternal indestructibility, and could live for more than 10,000,000 years. As for how long they could live, no one knew, because every time a demigod was born, they would disappear into the universe after a few years. No one knew where they went. When the martial Dao Yuan spirit reached the silver level, Yi Chen's aura became pure like the vast starry sky, eternal and unfathomable. Boom! With a punch, space-time trembled. The silver-level martial Dao Yuan spirit allowed Yi Chen's combat power to increase crazily. The power of this punch was much stronger than when he used the heavenly sword. The fist energy landed on the barrier of the Desolate God's secret domain, triggering waves of Desolate God's will. Essence, qi, and spirit were the foundation of a person, while Yuanshan of martial arts was the condensation and transformation of the essence, qi, and spirit. It was the foundation of the foundation. The stronger Yuanshan of martial arts, the stronger the battle power would be. The stronger the Yuanshan of martial arts was, the stronger the battle power would be. This was different from sword intent, which could only increase a part of the battle power. 90% of a person's battle power was reflected in Yuanshan of martial arts and martial arts. Yuanshan of martial arts was the foundation of a person, while martial arts were the amplifiers, which could increase one's strength. Of course, it didn't mean that sword intent wasn't important. On the contrary, sword intent was as important as Yuanshan of martial arts and martial arts. Yi Chen, you broke through to legend rank. After returning to the Unfalling Eagle tribe, Lan Yu could tell with a glance that Yi Chen had a breakthrough. Yes. I was lucky. It was indeed luck this time. That's great. You will definitely be first in the Desolate God Tower. Lan Yu was very confident in Yi Chen. Yi Chen shook his head. Don't underestimate the first demon sovereign. Although I've smoothly become a legendary sovereign, and my strength has improved by leaps and bounds, the first demon sovereign definitely hasn't stopped improving after all these years. Perhaps his improvement isn't any less than mine. You're right, but I don't think you should underestimate yourself. I have confidence in you anyway. Lan Yu smiled. Yi Chen also smiled. Of course I won't underestimate myself. Everything depends on this time. Without a competitive spirit, one would not be able to improve quickly. It all depended on how you viewed competition. For Yi Chen, winning or losing was not important. What was important was how much effort you put into winning or losing. Ying Lai Xiong heard from Lan Yu that Yi Chen had broken through to legend rank, and laughed out loud. If Yi Chen could get first place again, adding on Lan Yu, the Unfalling Eagle tribe would get 3 portions of time, which was a good thing. Time passed very quickly. It was time for the 4th attempt at the Desolate God Tower. Early in the morning, the people of the 5 great tribes arrived at the plains near the Desolate God Tower. Hey, he really became a legendary supreme. Zhon Xiong noticed the change in Yi Chen. Did he break through? Evil Star squinted his eyes and looked at the first demon venerable. He no longer had any thoughts of competing with Yi Chen. Yi Chen hadn't broken through yet, and he wasn't his opponent, let alone Yi Chen who had broken through. The only one who could be Yi Chen's opponent was the first demon venerable, and vice versa. Originally, he thought that the first demon venerable would catch up and completely dominate everyone. He didn't expect that after maintaining his advantage for 100 years, there would be a new change. First demon venerable, your opponent is not simple. Let's see if you can keep the first place this time. Interesting, very interesting. The first demon venerable sized up Yi Chen. His eyes emitted an intense battle intent. The first place that was obtained too easily was not what he wanted. He wanted to make Yi Chen lose wholeheartedly and not dare to have any other thoughts. Just like Evil Star, Yi Chen had subconsciously submitted to him. I'm looking forward to your performance. I hope you won't disappoint me. The first demon venerable said to Yi Chen. Yi Chen said indifferently, "I'm just afraid you won't be able to accept the result. There's nothing I can't accept. Just bring it on. Then you'll have to wait and see." As the two spoke, the tower challenge began. The two of them were the last to enter the Desolate God Tower. Ding-ling-ling. The bell of the Desolate God Tower rang crazily. The moment the two of them entered, the bell rang. So fast. Everyone stared at the crystal stele and were dumbfounded. The first place was either Yi Chen or the first demon venerable. The floors behind the two of them were flickering crazily. Every time they blinked, it would flicker. Evil Star and company were also very fast, but they were slower than the two of them. 100th floor, 200th floor, 500th floor. From the 500th floor onward, the difference started to show. Other than Yi Chen and the first demon venerable, the rest of the floors were no longer the same. Evil Star was temporarily ranked 3rd, Kang Xueli was 4th, Battle Bear was 5th, and Lan Yu was 8th. As for 1st and 2nd place, it was constantly changing. Sometimes, Yi Chen was 1st, and sometimes, the first demon venerable was 1st. On the 600th floor, a large number of young geniuses were eliminated. When they saw the speed of the 1st and 2nd place, their eyes nearly popped out. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself with others. There were only 9 people who made it past the 700th floor. Lan Yu had improved by 1 and was now in 8th place. She stopped at the 705th floor. The 9th place was 4 floors lower than her, at the 701st floor. The 7th and 6th places were at the 708th and 710th floor respectively. The difference between the 4 of them wasn't very big, and they were evenly matched. "Yi Chen, you can do it." After coming out, Lan Yu secretly cheered for Yi Chen. Currently, only Yi Chen could pose a threat to the first demon venerable. The rest had been left far behind. 792nd floor. Previously, Yi Chen stopped at this floor. This time, he instantly made it. The desolate spirit couldn't even block a single sword strike from him. 795th floor. 800th floor. Finally, Yi Chen reached the 800th floor. At the 800th floor, Yi Chen still didn't find it strenuous. 820th floor. 830th floor. It wasn't only Yi Chen. The first demon venerable also seemed to be riding a rocket. The number of floors he cleared soared. At times, he would be 1 floor higher than Yi Chen, and at other times, he would be 1 floor lower than Yi Chen. At their cultivation realm, sometimes, it depended on the timing. If the timing was good, they might be able to quickly clear the floor. "I can't take it anymore." Evil Star stopped at the 785th floor. When he came out, he glanced at the crystal stone monument and couldn't help but gasp. What kind of medicine did the two of them eat? Even if they improved, it shouldn't be this exaggerated. One had to know that the higher one went in the Desolate God Tower, the harder it was to clear each floor. It was already very impressive to clear a few more floors, but the two of them improved by dozens of floors every time. Chapter 1377. The leaders of the 5 great tribes looked very serious. The 830th level was getting closer and closer to them. They had only made it to the 900th level. Although the 70th level was more difficult than the previous 800 levels, it didn't stop the two of them from making rapid progress. He's actually on par with the great Demon King's bloodline. This kid must be an influential figure outside. Yun Piaomiao muttered. At this moment, the leaders of the 5 tribes had already treated the first demon venerable and Yi Chen as equals. Although the two's current strength was inferior to theirs, they had the time to catch up and even surpass them. On the 835th floor, the first demon venerable pushed his strength to the limit. His dazzling fist energy was like a black meteor in the night sky. He punched out quickly and fiercely. On the 834th floor, Yi Chen's sword was like the sharpest scalpel. It flickered as it followed Huang Ling's floors. Every time it flickered, it would leave a mark on Huang Ling's body. Die. A sword parried Huang Ling's saber. Sparks flew everywhere. Yi Chen's sword brushed past the saber and pierced Huang Ling's throat. It really wasn't easy. Fortunately, not only did I become a legendary supremacy, but my heart sword has also reached the middle stage. Without any time to rest, Yi Chen was transported to the 835th floor. Yi Chen caught up. Yi Chen surpassed him. He was surpassed again. The rankings of Yi Chen and the first demon venerable kept changing. Outside the desolate god tower, everyone's expression kept changing. Yi Chen was right. The first demon venerable is really terrifying. Lan Yu frowned. Beside her, Ying Lai Xiong said, "They are the pride of their generation. They are natural rivals. Without their talent, it's impossible to predict their future." Sometimes, comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. Ordinary geniuses wouldn't be able to compete with others who could improve by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. As long as such people were given a chance, they could reach a realm that others couldn't even dream of, step by step towards the peak and becoming a legend. On the crystal stele, Yi Chen was first at the 840th step, while the first demon sovereign was second, also at the 840th step. The two had been on the 841st step for a long time. Yi Chen was the first to reach this step, so his ranking was ahead. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or not, but the desolate spirit on the 841 floor was nearly as strong as Yi Chen. The odds of victory were 50-50. If one was not careful, it was normal for one to be defeated. Of course, it would be even more difficult for his opponent to defeat Yi Chen by relying on the defensive sword style. It should be known that the defensive sword style was specifically used against opponents who were slightly stronger than the user. It would be extremely difficult for someone of the same level to break through it, unless they had some special ability or martial arts. Compared to Yi Chen, the first demon ancestor's situation was slightly worse. It wasn't that Huang Ling was stronger than the first demon ancestor. In truth, the first demon ancestor even had a slight advantage in the battle. Unfortunately, it would take a long time for him to turn this slight advantage into an advantage and then into a victory. The first demon ancestor's body was made of flesh and blood after all, so he would eventually get tired. If he couldn't defeat his opponent before he got tired, the chances of him passing this level would be very slim. Boom. After 3 days and 3 nights, the first demon ancestor started to get impatient. His body began to emit a silver-black light. This was the light of his martial Yuan spirit. Ordinary Supreme's martial Yuan spirits were silver-white in color, but the first demon ancestor's martial Yuan spirit was different. It was actually silver-black in color. Very few people knew that the Great Demon King bloodline not only had unlimited potential, but the martial Yuan spirit they had was also different. This was the Darkness Yuan spirit unique to the Great Demon King bloodline. It was much stronger than ordinary martial Yuan spirits, and its explosive power was even more ferocious. After a few heavy strikes, Huang Ling was constantly forced to retreat. However, he never lost his stance, making the first demon ancestor unable to find a chance to hit his opponent. On the other hand, Yi Chen was defending and attacking at the same time. He was constantly looking for a chance, a 1 in a million chance. Such an opportunity was very rare. Yi Chen could only ensure that he didn't make a mistake and wait for others to make a mistake. 7 days have passed. Outside the desolate god tower, many people sighed. The battle between the two had lasted for 7 days. To fight for 7 days without eating or drinking, no one else would be able to do it. Exhaustion and weakness. When these two factors came together, the vast majority of people would choose to give up. Or, their minds might not be able to take it, and a hole would appear in their hearts. Yi Chen. Lan Yu clenched her fists. She believed that Yi Chen wouldn't be the first to fall. Not to mention his strength, she admired Yi Chen's temperament. He was a person who would do what he said, a person who never gave up. Of course, the first demon ancestor also gave her a very terrifying feeling. His heart was like a deep pool of stagnant water, without any ripples. 8th day. 9th day. The first demon ancestor deliberately revealed a flaw. The reason he did so was because he had no other choice. He was certain that if the battle continued, he would most likely be the one defeated. This was because his opponent wasn't an ordinary life form. He didn't know what exhaustion was, nor did he know what weakness was. At this moment, he could only risk it. Otherwise, in a few more days, he wouldn't even have the chance to do so. Sensing a flaw, Huang Ling slashed out with his saber. The saber light was like lightning that was thousands of times faster. With a poochie sound, the first demon ancestor's left arm was severed. As if he couldn't feel any pain, a cold smile flashed on the first demon ancestor's face. His right fist punched towards Huang Ling's head with extreme speed and power. He was determined to succeed with this punch. This punch did indeed hit Huang Ling's head. Unfortunately, the first demon ancestor had underestimated Huang Ling's reaction speed. Huang Ling was one step ahead. With a flip of his saber, his head was sliced off. Bang! Huang Ling retreated a few steps. The first demon ancestor's fist force hadn't completely landed. With a grave and stern expression, the first demon sovereign walked out of the desolate god tower. Subconsciously, he turned his head and looked at the crystal tablet. Yi Chen's image was still colorful, and his ranking was above his. Although the number of floors he had cleared was the same. Ying Liexiong, both of you are first. Let's split the time equally. Yun Piaomiao didn't think that Yi Chen could pass the 841 level. If he could, he would have done it long ago. Right now, he should be getting weaker and weaker. Ying Liexiong retorted, how is there a tie for first? The first place is obviously Yi Chen. Both of them have the same number of levels. Yun Piaomiao was a little unhappy. I only look at the crystal tablet's ranking. Ying Liexiong didn't take half a step back. Let's wait for Yi Chen to come out first. The two of you should stop arguing. Kang Siwei persuaded. To be honest, a tie for first place hadn't happened for countless years. It was indeed not easy to solve. Both of them were reasonable. The solution to this problem was very simple. That was for Yi Chen to surpass the first demon ancestor. However, the possibility was too small. 9 days had already passed. As time passed, the hope was getting smaller and smaller. On the evening of the 9th day, the number of floors passed behind Yi Chen's image suddenly flashed once. 841, it meant that Yi Chen had passed through the 841st floor. Chapter 1378. He surpassed it. Lan Yu waved her fist excitedly. Ying Liexiong was stunned at first. He then grinned at Yun Piaomiao, first place is ours. Do you still have any objections? Me. Yun Piaomiao turned her head and looked depressed. This was too strange. He could even pass it like this. Amazing. Zhong Xiong looked at Kang Xueli in shock. The first demon lord with the bloodline of the great demon king had improved a lot. Last time, he had passed 802 levels, and this time, he had passed 840 levels. This speed of improvement was 10 times faster than theirs. They didn't expect Sword Venerable Yi Chen to improve even faster, surpassing the first demon lord. Kang Xueli shook her head, don't look at me. I didn't expect him to surpass the first demon lord. Indeed, we don't understand their world. Zhong Xiong shook his head. Surpassed? Evil Star was a little dazed. When he regained his senses, he couldn't help but look at the first demon lord. This was the first time the first demon lord's face changed. It wasn't anger, but rather, heaviness. Evil Star thought to himself. The first demon lord's heart wasn't heavy, but serious. He was starting to treat Yi Chen seriously. If he didn't treat Yi Chen seriously now, it wouldn't be confidence, but arrogance. The bloodline of the great demon king had never been arrogant, and he wasn't one either. The reason why the bloodline of the great demon king could stand at the peak was because they could maintain absolute calmness and rationality no matter what. This was innate. 842 levels. Yi Chen didn't last long before he was defeated by Huang Ling. He was already exhausted and didn't expect to pass the 842 levels. When he came out and saw Lan Yu's expression, Yi Chen knew that he had reached first again. To be honest, it was impossible for him not to feel anything. To him, the most important thing wasn't to defeat the bloodline of the great demon king, but to prove that he had the potential to reach the peak of the martial path. As for the bloodline of the great demon king, it was just a strong opponent. Their eyes met and sparks could be seen. The first demon lord and Yi Chen didn't say anything. They just looked at each other and retracted their gazes. They understood that the other party was their strongest opponent, so there was no need to say anything. The yin-yang sword art is complete. The unfalling eagle tribe received 3 portions of time, which was 30 years. Yi Chen's contribution was huge, so he was directly given 4 years. In only 2 years, Yi Chen created a perfect yin-yang swordsmanship. This yin-yang swordsmanship had 2 styles. The first style was yin-yang coexistence, and the second style was yin-yang tai kai. The coexistence of yin and yang was very mysterious. Once the sword was unleashed, the sword chi seemed to have a mind of its own. It did not increase or decrease, nor did it dissipate. After locking onto the enemy's aura, it would not disappear unless the enemy was dead. Of course, if the enemy was very strong and could break the coexistence of yin and yang, then that would be another matter. Yin-yang tai chi, this was a sealing sword move. After the black and white sword chi formed a tai chi diagram, it would trap the enemy in the tai chi diagram and use the endless sword chi to obliterate the enemy. The area it covered could be big or small. The creation of the yin-yang sword art didn't directly increase Yi Chen's battle strength. After all, no matter how strong the yin-yang sword art was, it was only at the level of the 5 elements sword art and the space-time sword art. However, an additional sword art could make Yi Chen more comprehensive. Yin-yang coexistence and yin-yang tai chi also had their own uses. In the 4th year, Yi Chen created the 4 symbols sword art. The 4 symbols sword art contained the 4 profound meanings of earth, water, fire, and wind. It was similar to the 5 elements sword art, but it was more tyrannical. The 4 symbols sword art also had 2 styles. The first was the 4 symbols hegemon sword art, which was derived from the hegemon sword art. The second was the 4 extremes of heaven and earth. The difference between the 4 symbols hegemon sword art and the hegemon sword art was that the 4 symbols hegemon sword art had a wide attack range. The sword aura would transform into the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise, while the hegemon sword art condensed the sword energy into a single line. It was an extreme attack. However, if the opponent was fast enough to dodge, it wouldn't be restricted by the hegemon sword art. The second move, Heaven and Earth 4 Extremes, was a passive attack. Using this move didn't require the use of treasured swords. What was required was the heart sword. Using the heart sword to condense the 4 symbols sword energy and hide it on the surface of the body. Once the enemy attacked, the 4 symbols sword energy would be activated to counterattack the enemy. At the crucial moment, it could also save the user from danger. Finally, the only sword arts that Yi Chen didn't know were the life and death sword art and the light and darkness sword art. In the 4 years, Yi Chen created 2 sword arts. Next, he planned to comprehend the word time and raise the profound of time to the great success realm, or even the perfection realm. After all, the profound of time was the second most profound after the profound of power. In terms of difficulty, it was much more difficult to comprehend than the profound of power. It was the most difficult profound to comprehend. Even though Yi Chen had become a legendary supreme, it wasn't easy for him to comprehend the profound of time to the great success realm. Figuratively speaking, the profound of power was like a person's strength, while the profound of time was like a person's lifespan. It was useless if one only had strength and died early. It was also useless if one only had lifespan without strength. There were many records about the great success realm of time. For example, one's lifespan could reach an unimaginable level, or one could control the flow of time in an area. Of course, this speed of time couldn't be as fast as the Tower of Time in the Paradise of Gods. It was already amazing to be able to speed up or slow down time by a few times. In the Tower of Time, it could be 10 or even 100 times faster. This wasn't something that humans could do. Only true gods could do. 96%, 97%, 98%. After spending 20 years, Yi Chen raised the profound of time to 98%. He was only one step away from the great success realm. At that time, There would be a qualitative leap. In the blink of an eye, 30 years had passed. The profound of time had finally reached the great success realm. The moment he exited the strange space, Yi Chen felt as if he could see the flow of time. He could see the trajectory of time. He could even feel his own lifespan. He felt that he could live for about 4 million years. He was only 1 million years away from the limit of legendary supremes. Is this the profound of time? So magical. The great success realm of power allowed Yi Chen to feel the essence of power. The profound of time also allowed Yi Chen to feel the essence of time. Of course, there was still a long way to go before he understood the essence. Have I reached the limit? After the profound of time reached the great success realm, Yi Chen found that he couldn't concentrate on comprehending the word time. It was very hard for him to understand. Could it be that the great success realm was a forbidden area that no one was allowed to enter? Your profound of time reached the great success realm? Ying Liexiong looked surprised. Yes. Yi Chen and Ying Liexiong would occasionally talk. This time, Yi Chen asked his question. Who knew that Ying Liexiong would be surprised that his profound of time reached the great success realm? I'm so envious. Ying Liexiong sighed and said, comprehending the profound of time requires talent. If you don't have enough talent, even if a demigod personally teaches you, you won't be able to comprehend the profound of time to a very high level. Otherwise, the word time has been in my unfalling eagle tribe for so many years. There wouldn't be no supremes who reached the great success realm. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,